Welcome to the Monday, May 23rd Board of Commissioners meeting. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Up first, we have the approval of the minutes of the Special Board of Commissioners meeting for May 3rd, 2011. Do I have a motion for that approval?
Will it be approved?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any commissioner comment?
You know, I just think we should remove from Section 1, it has Kresna Partners in as listed as a firm that was giving a presentation on the planning services, and that's not what they were there for. They were for a different presentation, so if we could just omit Kresna Partners from Section 1.
Any other amendments?
Jim Canolio's name is spelled incorrectly. They must have thought he was Nick's brother.
Where's that listed?
Probably under Parks and Rec, I would guess.
Oh, you're on the May 9th or the May 3rd?
May 9th.
Okay, we're on May
doing May
3rd
3rd.
right now. Okay, any other amendments to the May 3rd?
Actually, under Commissioner comments on the first page, third to last line, it has planned institutional code, should be planned institutional.
Okay,
Will it be approved as amended?
okay.
Second.
Any public comment on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, we have the approval of the minutes for the public meeting for May 9th, 2011.
Will it be approved with Jim's name spelled right?
Yep.
Any further commissioner comment?
Yes, on page 6, the top paragraph where it says the motion to postpone, I made the motion. I don't know who seconded it, but at least to be consistent, it should indicate that I made the motion to postpone.
Okay. Any further revisions? Okay, any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Noting Commissioner Spingler's motion, Commissioner Mahoney's second on that. The Board of Commissioners met just prior to this public meeting. We discussed matters of personnel, litigation, and real estate. All commissioners were present. The meeting began at 5 p.m. and ended at 7:20. We have some members from the Memorial Day Parade I'd like to invite up. Is someone here that would like to talk about the parade? Try to get you guys up first.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Doug Felsky and Marta Costello from the Parade Committee. We don't sell tickets, so we don't have anything to sell you for a first ticket to kick it off, like a lot of other things. But just to let everybody know, parade's going to be coming Monday, and let everybody know that the town of Wayne starts filling up around 9:30. So if you want to get a seat up toward the front of the parade and be able to watch it, get there early.
And what time does the parade begin?
Parade's at 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. Okay. Thank you.
And
Marty, would you
Marty,
like to
do
say
you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I hope everybody in Radnor gets to attend this parade. We have a couple of excellent grand marshals this year, J.J. Williamson and John Williamson, both graduates of Archbishop Carroll, both graduates of West Point, both served in Iraq, and J.J. came back from Iraq, trained with the Green Berets, and went back as the commander of the Green Berets in Afghanistan. So this will be a great opportunity for people to meet these modern-day warriors. And, of course, after the parade, the community is invited back to the American Legion Post to meet and greet these wonderful guys. So I hope everybody can come. Hope the commissioners can come, because you'll really meet some wonderful people. Thank you.
Yeah, and you didn't introduce yourself at the beginning, so the people at home that don't know you.
I'm Marty Costello, Commander of the American Legion, Post 668 in Wayne, and you're all invited.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Many thanks to both of you and the parade committee for all the work they've done to get the parade going this year. We much appreciate that.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. The parade ends at the Wayne Radnor War Memorial, and it has just been refurbished and restored to what I believe is absolutely gorgeous. Shannon Claire did the gardening. Nick Sandalori did the stonework. And then this is where we honor the war dead at the end of the parade. So the people in the community, this is what the Memorial Day Parade is all about, keeping the names and the deeds of the war dead alive. So please come to the memorial and join us in the ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the confirmation of Steve Norsini, professional engineer of the Public Works Director. Mr. Zinkowski, would you like to lead this?
Yes, thank you. I'm recommending the confirmation of Steve Norsini as the Public Works Director for Radnor Township. Steve comes to us with a great deal of experience, especially from our neighboring community of Tredyffrin. He also is a licensed engineer, which I think will be very beneficial for the township, and would ask the Board of Commissioners for a vote of confirmation.
I so move.
I'd like to just note that he also was born and raised in Radnor. I think he went to Carroll, and is anxious to get back.
I'd just like to add that this is an administrative function to hire the directors, but Mr. Zinkowski also included members of the Personnel Committee and the Board of Commissioners in this decision, and we fully support this nomination. So at this point, if there's any further board comment, any public comment? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, we have a presentation of heroism and commendation certificate for Officer Brett Greaves and Officer Michael DeHoradis. I will come up to the podium for this, and I believe Mr. Colarulla, would you like to come up as well? Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to acknowledge Officer, I want to make sure I say it right, DeHoradis is from Tredyffrin Township. This incident happened in Tredyffrin, and they were gracious enough also last week to honor our Officer Greaves at Tredyffrin.
Okay. Would you like to explain the situation for this commendation?
Yes, it was about a year ago, and they were on routine patrol, and at the area of Old Eagle School Road and Homestead, there was a car that was involved in a serious accident. The driver was trapped in a burning vehicle, and if it wasn't for the quick reaction by these two officers, without any regard to their own safety, that person definitely would have perished in that fire. So they are heroes. They saved this individual's life.
Thank you.
And I'd like to acknowledge also they're here with their family and their children.
Okay, I'll ask Officer Brett Greaves to come up, and also Officer DeHoradis. I think I just murdered the name, but I apologize for that. Officers, say hi. Sure. I'll read the commendation. I'll see how good my eyes are working tonight. This commendation of heroism is for Officer Brett Greaves, and I'll also say for Officer Michael DeHoradis, for an outstanding act of duty and humanity in extricating the driver from a burning vehicle that was involved in a serious crash on May 16, 2010. Your immediate actions and outstanding courage resulted in saving the life of Mr. Jeffrey Johnson. Your actions and professionalism and that morning exemplify excellence in policing, which are in the greatest traditions of Radnor Township Police Department and the entire law enforcement community. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners and Radnor Township, I'd like to commend both of you for your service to the community and for saving lives. Thanks, sir. Next up, we have the proclamation of National Safety Month and presentation of a safety award. I believe Bill
John, I
Martin-
think you were going to move something around, or did you change it since we...
Oh, I may have.
You were going to let Joe come up and deal with the...
Okay, yeah, I'll have, instead, we'll do item A on the agenda. We have members of the Civil Service Commission, and we also have Joe Rudolph, our special counsel, that would like to come up and introduce our new civil service procedure. Let me grab that from my packet here.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. And why don't I introduce the commissioners, Commissioner Bruce Wilson, Commissioner Jim Higgins, and our alternate is Ed Mullenix. Our counsel is Joe Rudolph from the law firm of Reed Smith. My name is Philip Deming. I am the chairman of the Civil Service Commission, and I'm here tonight to offer our proposed ordinance change, which will amend Section 5-70 Civil Service Provisions of Chapter 8 of the Radnor Township Municipal Code. This ordinance has been included in all your packages, and you should have that. The purpose of this ordinance change is twofold. Effective October 2010, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania enacted a new statute, which the provisions within the statute became effective immediately. The provisions include the hiring and promotional process for first-class townships, which affect Radnor. In addition, there was changes in the old ordinance that needed to be adjusted to comply with the federal requirements, particularly the Americans with Disability Act. The Civil Service Commission became aware of this change and immediately suspended the promotional process for corporal, sergeant, and lieutenant. The net effect was 19 officers are currently in limbo in terms of the process. They've been waiting since October in terms of what the outcome is, and I want to publicly acknowledge those officers for their professionalism and their patience with this untimely and unique delay. In terms of this, the township retained outside counsel, as I mentioned, Mr. Rudolph from Reed Smith, who was responsible for preparing the draft ordinance change and then submitted it to the Civil Service Commission. For the last 2 months, the Civil Service Commission has been working diligently with the outstanding support of our superintendent and the township manager in terms of editing and coming up with the appropriate language. And I want to take this time particularly, since he's a new member of this township, is Superintendent Colorillo offered a number of wonderful recommendations to strengthen the recruiting and promotional process for the best qualified candidates. But importantly, he offered recommendations that will have a cost impact to this community in terms of saving dollars, and that has been incorporated in this ordinance. Last Wednesday, the 18th of May, the Civil Service Commission had a public hearing where the proposed ordinance was discussed. A number of Radnor Township police officers were present, offered thoughtful recommendations. They were included in our draft. We then voted on this draft unanimously, supported the proposal to submit to you, the Board of Commissioners, this evening. We believe this document has been thoroughly vetted by at least 3 attorneys on the Civil Service Commission, 1 human resource expert with law enforcement experience, as well as being vetted by our outside counsel. This has been an extremely inclusive process involving the township, the police officers, because we've held separate meetings with the officers to get their input, as well as the outside counsel, as well as the commissioners. I would now like to present the ordinance change to you, and I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Philip.
I'll move the introduction of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, any board comment?
I'd just like to ask Joe, any additional comments you'd like to make, Joe? No. Okay, great. Thank you for that presentation, Phil.
Yeah, that was very informative. Did you start from, a standard or another township's version of this? Because I called up our old code, and, there are a lot of changes. So I'm interested in the process, how you...
The process was simply, we had the 2004 ordinance, which our outside counsel used, as a template to start the process, and then incorporated the statutory requirements both under Commonwealth and the federal statute.
Great. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank all of you for your work and effort on this. Without your volunteer effort, we wouldn't be able to get these things done. And special thanks to Joe Rudolph also for being a huge part of this process. I mean, at this point, I think I'm going to see if any public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll note that Commissioner Spengler moved and Commissioner Mahoney second on that ordinance 2011 and 15. Next up, we will do the proclamation of National Safety Month and the presentation of the Safety Award. I think Bill Martin was going to join me up front. I'll first read the proclamation. This is the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township proclamation setting June as the National Safety Month. Whereas June marks the 15th anniversary of National Safety Month, this annual observance reflects the National Safety Council's historic commitment to inspiring people to adopt and maintain safe and healthy behaviors in all aspects of their lives. And whereas the National Safety Council established National Safety Month in 1996 to increase public awareness of safety and health risks and to ultimately decrease the number of accidental injuries and deaths in the United States. And whereas the National Safety Council is aggressively urging businesses of all sizes to set standards for safety within their organizations that include safety and well-being of their employees' families, as well as the communities in which their businesses operate. And whereas the Radnor Township Workplace Safety Committee is a steward for promoting and communicating these safety standards to the township employees. And whereas the Workplace Safety Committee will be hosting a safety fair on June 29, 2011, which will be open to staff, residents, and businesses at the Township Municipal Building. And therefore be resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township does hereby thank and honor the Workplace Safety Committee for its achievements in increasing awareness of safe and healthy practices and their efforts to instill a culture of safety throughout the organization, and encourages all residents and businesses in the township to do the same.
Move the approval of the proclamation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any board comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, President Fisher. If I could invite the rest of the Safety Committee, the members that are here tonight, if you could come up for a second. Along with the proclamation, just a little bit of background. The Workplace Safety Committee was established in 1995. We're certified by the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. It's really through the dedicated hard work of these individuals and the other people who couldn't be here tonight that we're very lucky to, this past May, receive a Distinguished Service Award, which was presented at the the regional training seminar that we go to every year. And Commissioner Fisher, if you want to hold on to that. As a result of the hard work of this group and the people who couldn't be here, a few more of the members that weren't here, Larry Taltone, Ricky Foster, Sue Jones, they take their service and dedication that allows us to receive this special award tonight. So if you would like to present the award to the committee.
I'll pass it down. I want to thank you all personally for the work you do on the committee. It means a lot to us as a township, but in particular as an organization as big as we are, that we put work safety first, and that's really important for a lot of reasons. So thank you again.
And just one more quick thing about through the efforts of this committee and really with the leadership under Jim and
You want to announce these four individuals? Or
yes.
have them announce
Yeah, we're going to
themselves?
get
Okay.
Jim Doling, our president of the committee, Linda Roney, our secretary, Elizabeth Trevenek, and our officer, Kevin Gallagher, Sorry about that. Through their efforts, they came up with this wonderful idea of having, we haven't done this in a long time, but a health and safety fair for our employees, but then the idea came to, why don't we open it up to the public? And they've been working tirelessly to get vendors to supply all different activities for us. It's going to be open to the public from 8 to 1 p.m. on June 29th, as was mentioned in the proclamation. Just a couple of vendors that, are volunteering either food or other services to the public. Mainline Health, the Wayne Senior Center, Radnor Township Police Department, Radnor Fire Company, Radnor Conservancy, the American Lung Association, Radnor Township Board of Health, Norberth Ambulance, Risk Management Associates, James Glathorn, Delaware County Restoration, Arthur J. Gallagher and Company, Delaware County Emergency Response Center, Achieving Better Control Incorporated, which is a diabetes self-management company, Bryn Mawr Hospital, Community Health Services, Ron Hamlin from the Lyme Disease Association of Southeast Pennsylvania, Dr. Justin Ackerman, a chiropractor, and COSA, the County Office of Services for the Aging, along with some other vendors. So it's going to be a really nice event that this group has put together. So if you're available that day, please come out. We look forward to seeing you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks again. Okay, thanks again.
I believe the motion on that was Commissioner Spengler and Commissioner Mahoney on the second. Is that right?
No,
No?
I seconded it.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Nagel, second that. Next up, we have an announcement for SERV PA, the State Emergency Registry of Volunteers in Pennsylvania. Superintendent Colorillo, did you want to speak to this? Or is this a...
Yeah, I'll cover that as well.
Oh,
if that's
Bill,
okay.
I'm sorry.
The health officer, Larry Toltone, went to an event and they gave him some pamphlets, this information here. The Commonwealth and PEMA are looking for a volunteer registry for members across the state to register if you're interested in serving in the event of an emergency. It's a volunteer effort to get you involved in an event we need to call out additional support. If you volunteer, there's no requirement that you have to attend any kind of national emergency, but you do become a register and register with the state as an available resource if we need you. Delaware County is looking to generate about 400 volunteers just for the county. It's an online service. You can register online at www.readypa.org. Again, it's not if you register in some type of event when you're not comfortable showing up, you don't have to, but they like to pre-register people online. It'll be confidential, and if you have any skills that you think would be useful in the event of emergency, we recommend that you come out and help us volunteer for that.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just repeat that, www.readypa.org, all one word. Thank you again. Next up, I have a presentation of a LoJack Safety Net Police Department program. This is Superintendent Colorillo.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce at this time Mr. Scott Martin, who's the director from LoJack Safety Net. Also, Terry Kelly, who's the law enforcement liaison. That's the gentleman behind Scott. And I also worked with Terry many years ago when he was a detective in Philadelphia. Also, Corporal Kevin Gallagher. Kevin Gallagher worked on the policy for missing persons and if we implement this in Radnor Township. They're going to have a brief video. They understand time is of the essence because of the agenda. I'm going to let them explain what this program is, and I'll turn it over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. We realize time is of the essence. We'll talk short, show you a brief video, and we're around for questions if you have any afterwards. I'm the law enforcement director with LoJack. I had 29 years in law enforcement. Terry had 27 with the Philly PD, so we come from a law enforcement background. And everybody here is probably familiar with LoJack and stolen vehicles and that type of thing. LoJack is now involved in a program where we track missing people with cognitive conditions, dementia, Alzheimer's people, children with autism, Down syndrome, that type of thing, and we do it by means of a radio frequency transmitter bracelet that they're provided with, and we train and equip law enforcement agencies at no cost and provide them with tracking equipment so that they can go out looking for these folks when they go missing. You read about it in the newspapers all the time. These kids and a lot of the elderly folks with Alzheimer's disease wander off. Sometimes it takes hours, days. Many of them are never found at all. Recognizing this problem a couple of years ago, LoJack felt it was our responsibility to get involved in rescuing and recovering the most important asset of all, which is human lives. Thanks to Chief Colarulo, there's no doubt about it, we wouldn't be standing here if it was not for his invitation. This program is active in the Philadelphia Police Department. It has been for the last year and a half. We're in the Boston Police Department, Miami-Dade, and numerous other departments around the country. And at the request of Chief Colarulo, he asked that we come and present this program to his department, as well as to the commission for you to have a little bit of information on what it's all about. It's a true life-saving program. There's over 2,000 people out there that have been saved using this radio frequency technology, and these are people specifically with cognitive conditions, with dementia, Alzheimer's, autism, that type of thing, who wander off and for no reason other than the cognitive condition, they become lost and disoriented, and they cannot find their way back home. So LoJack provides this at, as I said before, no cost to the city of Radnor or any of the other towns or police departments that embark on this program. The tracking equipment which we provide is no charge, the training is no charge, and the caregivers pay a monthly fee to be in the program. And a lot of organizations that we work with, Alzheimer's group, autism groups, the Lions Club, Kiwanis Club, all help to raise money to pay for people who can't afford it in those communities like downtown Philadelphia where money is an issue. So we have mechanisms in place to help people who cannot afford it, but for the cities and the towns that we're at, it's absolutely no charge. So I just want to show you a brief video of a rescue that took place in the city of Philadelphia about a month and a half ago. This was a woman who was on the safety net program. Had she not been on the program, the outcome could have been considerably different. And our IT person is...
Jim is in the back.
Should show up on the screen here in just 1 minute.
Jim, we're ready for the video.
And Scott?
Jim?
Or is this...
Isn't it?
Oh, it's up here.
Oh, just going to play from here?
Sorry about that.
Got it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Then I didn't know I was in charge here. This button right here?
Wait for this lady.
Okay. Here we go. Yep. No, I didn't hit you. Sorry.
This is called the safety net. It's like a LoJack for people, and you can hook it into the local police department. Tonight, an elderly Philadelphia woman with Alzheimer's is alive and well because of it. It is Wednesday night, and the big story on Action News tonight is the rescue of a woman in West Philadelphia. Action News reporter Dan Cuellar is live at police headquarters over here. Sorry. Dan, LoJack isn't just for cars anymore.
That's right, Jim. You know, before this program, it could take days, even weeks, for police to try to locate a person with Alzheimer's who wandered away from home. But today, using this program, they tracked a 72-year-old woman who wandered away from home within an hour.
One save is awesome, and we're hoping in the future to get many more out of this.
It was a logical question. If they could locate a stolen car using LoJack, why not missing people? Voila! You're now looking at Safety Net by LoJack, now being used by Philadelphia Police. The subscriber to the service wears this bracelet, which resembles a wristwatch that is constantly transmitting a radio signal. Should you go missing, Philadelphia Police detectives use these radio receivers to zero in on your signal and track you down.
When he starts hearing this chirp, detective knows he's within the area, within the range of a person that's missing.
That's how they were able to track a 72-year-old woman this morning who wandered off in the cold wearing only her nightgown. Police tracked her sitting in an unlocked car she stumbled upon at 67th and Haverford, just 8 blocks from her home.
She was very thankful to the detective, thanked him multiple times, and just basically said she was tired of being at home.
Subscribers to the service pay a $99 startup fee and then $30 a month afterwards. The service is available in Philadelphia and Lower Merion.
We will soon be operational in Tredyffrin, Cheltenham, and Bensalem, and we're hoping by April these areas will be operational.
It was Councilman Jack Kelly who pitched the program to Commissioner Chuck Ramsey a year and a half ago. During that time, 350 people in the department were trained on how to use it.
Technology like this that can get us to a person a lot quicker, I think it is breakthrough, and it's something that the Commissioner has supported.
Now, the program is available to anyone who suffers a cognitive disorder or brain trauma. If you are interested in learning more about this program, we have posted a link to Safety Net on our webpage at 6abc.com. We're live at police headquarters. Dan Cuellar, Channel 6 Action News.
Thank you, Dan. In the words of...
That's it.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation, and the township will look into this and see if we want to be part of it. So
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. I just want to say, I'm Terry Kelly. I'm retired from Philly Police, and I work for the chief in Northwest Detectives, and you guys got a great guy. He's a real gentleman and a true professional.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Next up, I'm going to have a member of the new Charter Review Committee come up. This is John Ake, the chairman of the committee, and he's going to give us a brief introduction of the first meeting of the Charter Review Committee and the work that's done.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name's John Ake, and I am the newly elected chairman of the Charter Review Committee. We held our first meeting on the 16th, last Monday. It was a relatively short meeting, focused primarily just on electing a chairman and a vice chairman. The vice chairman who was elected is Dorothy Orlikowski. I was hoping I'd get this right, and I think I did. We have a next scheduled meeting, June 13th, and Monday, about 3 weeks from now. And at that meeting, what we're looking to do is focus on procedures, how we're going to actually proceed, timelines, and goals in achieving a review of the charter. We also are going to be taking a look on an initial basis on Articles 1 and Article 2 of the charter, which include the general authority of the township, and also Article 2 deals with the governance functions of the Board of Commissioners. We've still not worked everything out. As I say, it was an initial meeting. We were assisted quite ably by Bob Zinkowski at the meeting, who is a member of the committee but not a voting member. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to take any questions or comments that any of the commissioners may have.
My comment is I want to thank you and everyone on that committee for their willingness to serve on this committee. It's a very important committee. The charter was written in 1976, enacted in 1976, and it hasn't been changed since then. And at this point, we're taking a close look at it and seeing what maybe needs updating, what doesn't need updating. So we appreciate the work that you're doing. It's very important work. And hopefully, at the end of your term as an ad hoc committee, that the recommendations will come to the board, and at some point, the board will then put those recommendations onto a ballot as a referendum. So
yes.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
John, I'd also like to say thank you for volunteering your time and effort. Have you had any initial discussions at this early point about how you'd like people to participate and give you input?
Well, first we know that it's public under the Sunshine Act. So the meeting date and the agenda will be put on the website. My thought is, and we really haven't worked that out, it's clear that we're going to need and hopefully get public comment. By narrowing down the topics at each meeting so that they are focused on a particular area, my hope would be that what we will get is people who will come in and comment on that particular article rather than a general comment about what's needed in the charter and what's not needed in the charter. The other thing we're looking to do is to get input from the township administration and even obviously the township commissioners on the areas that they think may be particularly needing of update. We did receive a memorandum that John Rice prepared on certain updating provisions to update the charter to comply with changes in Pennsylvania law. I mean, as you pointed out, this has been 36 years that this is done, and there's some changes in Pennsylvania law. Bob provided us with copies of 5 other charters of comparable size: Westchester, Terdefferin, Havertown, Haverford, and 2 others, which names escape me right now, so that we have models to look at. My thought is that the key is really getting into the text itself and looking at what people may think is needed. One thing that I noted going through that in a cursory matter is that there are certain monetary levels that are set in the charter that had a particular meaning back in 1976, and that meaning has really been changed by inflation and other issues. So I think there are items that are what I would call administrative and technical to work through it. But what we would like to get, what I would like to get, is more input from people on particular areas that they think we ought to strengthen, provide more transparency for.
Thank you.
Hopefully that's
a
I
great
didn't mean
answer.
a long-winded response to it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much. You have a good night. We have Resolution 2011-71, it's an authorization to submit an Energy Smart Communities Municipal Energy Efficiency Grant application, otherwise known as EECBG. And I think, is this Bill Martin on this? Or Melissa? Thank you.
This resolution is to request the authorization to submit a grant application for the Energy Smart Communities Municipal Energy Efficiency Grant. The grant funds come from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. It's being administered by Delaware County, and any Delaware County municipalities that have submitted a letter of intent is eligible for a minimum of $15,000 for any project that is related to energy efficiency upgrades and conservation. And also, there is no match requirement for this grant.
I move the approval of the resolution.
Any commissioner comment?
Looks like a great idea. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, I want to thank you for staff and Melissa in particular for looking at this. We have a lot of opportunities that we don't have time to take, but we appreciate the extra effort on this and you finding time to do this. So thank you again. Any public comment? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Noting Commissioner Spengler's motion, Commissioner Mahoney second. And at this point, I'm going to open up the public hearing on Ordinance 2011-14. This is amending the Administrative Lot Change Code in our zoning code to allow for exceptions. Sorry, it's not in the zoning code. It's to allow for exceptions.
Subdivision.
Okay. So John Rice, do you want to give us a little introduction on this?
Yes, you have a provision in your existing saldo for consolidation of existing lots. This is an amendment to Chapter 255, Article 2, Section 255-8. It's an administrative exemption. The primary change here is that the exemption would not apply in certain circumstances. And they're listed on the second page of the amendment. When there's more than 3 parcels involved, when the area exceeds twice the minimum lot size for the district, and when there's a change of use or an expansion of existing commercial or industrial use. Your Planning Commission has approved this. We've gotten 2 reviews from Delaware County Planning Commission. It was before the board back in April, and it was tabled at that time. There was a little bit of a confusion as to what that paragraph 5 was to encompass, but it's been advertised for tonight, advertised May 4th, May 11th, for public hearing tonight and for possible adoption by the board.
Okay, thanks, John. At this point, I'll open it up to public comment, and this again is public comment on Ordinance 2011-14.
Public hearing.
Oh, it is public hearing, but public comment for the hearing.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jim Schneller. I live in St. David's Park in Wayne, and I live close to a lot of R4 and R5 districts. And I'm still incredulous that you are considering letting people consolidate. In light of the Garrett Hill, all the mountains of work that the Garrett Hill Steering Committee and all the citizens of Garrett Hill have done, and a lot of work I've seen, hard work done by people in other districts regarding more population-intensive development. We haven't seen a lot of it, but there's a potential that it could encroach on a lot of our comforts. And for people to simply have to record a deed is troublesome to me. I know that you've put in some control with with limiting it to a lot twice the minimum lot size, but that still allows for, in R5s, for one of our many, many single-family units.
Excuse me, Jim. The allowance is already there. What this does is restrict the allowance. So this should be, I would think you would view this favorably based upon the concerns that you identified at the beginning of your speech.
Is it, it's restricting it deeper in what way?
By limiting the consolidation, restricting it as per the 3 conditions on page 2, and then also clarifying the language on page 1. So the capability to consolidate will be less if we approve this rather than more. Is that accurate, John Rice?
That's correct.
Well, nevertheless, I was in the middle of that particular point because twice the minimum lot size can still bring us quite a bit of change in neighborhoods. Radnor has the characteristic of a lot of R5 neighborhoods that are currently not multi-dwelling. And I think 2 times the minimum lot size is too generous. And there's no mention in C, obviously, of the change of use would be a change of type of dwelling from single unit to multifamily. And also, frankly, as far as number A, I think it should be, I would ask you to make it 2 parcels because you're talking about, despite the limits in B, you're talking about a wide allowance that's given people the ability to do it by filing a paper. And Radnor needs controls. I mean, we have traffic burgeoning beyond the character of the township. So I don't want to seem like I'm being too sensitive, except that our comfort level is pretty exemplary. And it'd be nice to hold on to it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Baron Gemmer, South Wayne Avenue. Just to follow up on a little bit of the background as well as partially on the comments that Jim just made. The background here, I won't get into the specifics of the actual development, but two of the main purposes of this are to prevent split zone properties from being created, whether it's residential and commercial or even within residential R5, R4, or commercial C1, C2. So this gives a lot more leverage to make sure that doesn't happen, because once you get split zone properties, trying to apply zoning becomes a little more difficult, and it's easier just not to let that happen, particularly residential, commercial. Secondly, a lot of the zoning districts don't, some of them do, but a lot of them don't do a great job in terms of dealing with scale of buildings, even though some of them do have maximum widths, et cetera. So by limiting the lot size that you can do essentially by right when you do a consolidation, you can help control the scale in areas where it might not otherwise be controlled. To address, actually Jim talked about them a little. If you look at the part, I'm sorry, 5 talks about the exceptions before that, but the opening preamble, which is what it says, adjacent lots, and what's added is with identical zoning classifications. That's what eliminates that split possibility, or at least it has to come before the saldo process in order to go through on that. With the other ones, A, B, and C that Jim mentioned, A is more than 3 parcels. Yes, that could be problematic. Somebody could do 3 now and then take that new lot and do 2 later. But that, as Jim mentioned, will be limited by B. You're still going to, anytime you get above 2 times the minimum lot size, you're still going to have to come before. And that's probably a reasonable number in terms of the total lot area, depending on what, because it is per zoning classification. The same thing is true of C. I know Commissioner Fisher had asked about residential use, and Mr. Snell is correct that the C only talks about an expansion of existing or commercial or industrial use. So if you're expanding a residential use, that would not be covered under C, and you have that administratively up until you would hit the 2 times the minimum lot size. And at that point, you could start to decide whether that's something that's good for the neighborhood or not, as opposed to something that could be done administratively. So there's several development plans. It's the genesis of this, but this is with particularly 5B in there on the preamble, so limiting it to the same zoning classification and that it can't get above 2 times before it has to be reviewed. I think both of those in and of themselves are pretty good fail-safes for what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Any commissioner comment? Public comment on closing? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0 to close. Commissioner Spengler motion, Commissioner Schaefer second on that. Actually, John Rice, you had commented that this is not, I don't believe this is on the agenda for adoption tonight.
It's a public hearing. Oh.
No, I mean, in
Later?
addition to the hearing tonight.
It's up for adoption.
Oh.
What item number is that? Because it's not under community development.
You've been splitting the public hearing and then the actual adoption, but it was advertised on your agenda since January.
Should we go ahead and put this to a vote now then, because it's under the same?
Yeah, you should go ahead and do that instead
I'll
of
move the
splitting
approval of
it.
the ordinance.
Board comment? I'll just comment, I'm glad the changes are back in, that we had the correct draft in front of us. It seems like there are enough protections here, so I'm in favor of this at this point. Any further commissioner comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Commissioner Spengler motion, Commissioner Mahoney second on that adoption of ordinance, ordinance 2011-14. Okay, at this point, I'm going to open it up to public participation. I want to make a few comments. We have the Agnes Irwin lease that is on the agenda. You certainly will have an opportunity to speak during that introduction later on tonight. If you have comments for that item because you cannot be here later on tonight, they're welcome now. If you're able to stay through the meeting and be able to be here for that introduction, I would appreciate if you actually wait until that point. But if you need to make your comments and leave, that's fine. But you're free to come up now and make any comments you like on the agenda or any other item.
Sarah Pilling from Garrett Hill. I'd like to publicly thank the police department and Bill Colarulo for their amazing support that I've received this last week. In the mail about 10 days ago, I received a letter from a company I'd never heard of, not questioning, saying that I had bought a camera for $770.31, but they were unable to access my credit report because I've had it frozen from a prior incident. During the senior program last week, I spoke with the detectives, and they encouraged me to come up and file a police report. Nothing had really been lost, but nevertheless, it would be good to have. So I did that Friday morning. I was amazed and extremely pleased that by this afternoon, I had received a report. They had talked to the company. They had ascertained that it was someone with my same last name, but not the same first name, not the same Social Security. But somehow the credit bureau had decided it was mine. They were able to find out the IPO and find out that this was a scam from Nigeria. I had been doubting myself, how had someone stolen my credit card? I had been unable to access the complaint department of this company. They kept putting me on hold and canceling the call. And I just want to thank the police department because it was extraordinary. I have now a sense that I really am safe. I'm safe using my credit card, and that I can count on the police department when I have a problem. So thank you to your team, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Frone Crawford, lawyer in Westchester, speaking on the Agnes Irwin lease prospect. I appreciate your indulgence in allowing me to speak at this point, because I do have need to be home later in the evening. As you know, I've submitted a memorandum. I won't go over all of that. You have a horrendous agenda tonight, and I just trust that you will consider our position as set forth in the memorandum. I would like to add a couple of background comments, though, for your consideration. I was contacted last week by concerned citizens who are not just coming here out of the woodwork. They're all either past volunteers or actual members of this Board of Commissioners, and all active and very concerned residents of Radnor Township. And the term concerned residents is sometimes overused, but I think here it is clearly accurate. The second point that I'd like to make is that I have the utmost respect for Mr. Rice. I understand he's given you an opinion that apparently is contrary to mine. We haven't, of course, had the opportunity to review that opinion. However, my charge from my clients was not to come up with anything out of my own imagination that would put a stop to this proposed lease. The charge was, we don't have an opinion available because it's confidential, attorney-client. Mr. Rice has so stated, and we would like you to take an independent look at this issue and let us know if, in fact, there are legal issues. I think that's a very different charge than you see in many contested issues. And so I did that. I took a look at the cases that, as I called them, objectively as best I could. There are 3 cases in which the municipalities had equally worthy goals as yours is here. Your goal here is to help a constituent private school in the township, at the same time allow an upgrade in the quality of the field, and to also raise money for your taxpayers. Worthy objectives. Likewise, the city of Philadelphia had a very worthy objective in wishing to lease portions of their park in North Philadelphia to the Fox Chase Cancer Center. Equally worthy. Likewise, the city of Erie was burdened by a prior acceptance of dedication of a golf course. They wanted to divest themselves of their responsibilities, save the taxpayers their money, and was not permitted by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Thirdly, although probably not quite as worthy, Upper St. Clair Township wished to lease a very small portion of an existing park to a cellular tower company for revenue. Again, save the taxpayers money. In all 3 instances, the courts have found these worthy objectives to stumble because of failure to comply with the law. The public trust doctrine requires that once a municipality accepts the dedication or donation of parkland, that it becomes a steward, and there's only very limited ability to divest, either by sale or by lease. The cases deal with lease as well. And so we ask that you consider these provisions when you make your decisions. And I appreciate your time. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them. Otherwise, I will not impose further on your time.
Could you just repeat the second municipality? You named Philadelphia first. What was the second one?
Yes, City of Erie. This is the case that actually went to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The others are Commonwealth Court decisions. And but all three came out with the same result.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
John, I have two questions. Any comment on this? And then the opinion that you've given to us. Is there...
Can I, actually, Kevin, can I intervene?
Yeah, John.
Can we hold this until we have a motion on the table later?
Sure.
Because we don't have a motion on the table, and if we don't get a motion on the table, then I don't want to waste time. So rather hold that up. This is public comment. Any more public comment for tonight's meeting?
Hi, I'm Susan Byrne from Luella Court. I'll be brief. A couple of years ago, I went to a workshop at St. Mary's Church that talked about the sequence of events around the land development process and how some of the sequence of events that currently exist in Radnor were not as efficient as they could be because there was a back and forth that occurred through many of the boards. So the reason I bring that up is because I now find, last time I was here to see you all, not Bill, but to see you all, we were talking about the Luella Court above-ground garage project. The HARB had recommended a denial of a certificate of appropriateness, and you upheld their ruling. Now the developer has come back and also at that meeting, the HARB recommended that they look at the underground solution, but also look at going to zoning to talk to zoning about different, not exceptions, what's the term I'm looking for? Different, shoot, I know this so well. Variances they would need in order to go ahead with the development process. That's another word for it. So we are now going to go back in front of the HARB again. This is the third time. When we know that this project and also the project 200 West Wayne Avenue have some things that we believe to be inherent zoning issues. So the HARB can't really make a decision. So now we find that at a time when township staff is strapped and doesn't have enough time, and we don't either, that we're going back and forth again when we know that there are some issues that are definitely related to the underground garage at Luella Court and I believe also at 200 West Wayne. Just a thought, it's a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Baron Gemmer, South Wayne Avenue. Three quick things. I'd first like to echo Susan's comments that as I went before you and during public participation 2 or 3 meetings ago, I said that even though it's not codified yet, to me, getting rid of all the zoning issues prior to going to HARB it's already required before going to through subdivision, but it's not required for going through HARB, and I think that would help in not only wasting staff's time and the HARB's time, but even the applicant's time. So that's not codified yet. What I would ask, though, in the 2 cases we know of coming up right now, 200 West Wayne and Luella Court, that they'll proceed with the HARB at the upcoming HARB meeting, but because you have the latitude within 178 not to act, you don't have a time limit. That's one of the peculiarities of the HARB ordinance, that you not act on that next meeting or whatever meeting it is when it comes out with their recommendation until all zoning has been resolved, and you have that latitude because there is no time limit on it. So that's what I would reiterate that Susan is saying. Let's not have you vote on any certificates of appropriateness until zoning issues have been resolved. Hopefully we'll get that codified later, but for right now you just have to do it by choice. Secondly, a quick one. The August meeting, I have down the 22nd, and that's what you guys agreed to at the beginning. Usually though in the summer it's the 3rd Monday, and that happens to be the 4th, so I want to make sure that that's correct.
I believe it is. We don't adhere to the 3rd when
Okay.
we only have 1 meeting per month.
Okay.
So it does shift.
Well, no, it's 2 and 4 in the others, and it's usually the 3rd in June, July, and
I see what
August.
you're saying. Does anybody have the printed calendar?
I mean, I have them off the website.
We'll look into it.
Yeah, we don't need to discuss that.
I'm
Just look
pretty
into
sure
it.
it's right.
I just don't want somebody getting confused because usually that you can set your, except for like December and January, you can kind of set your clock by the rest of those. So, my last issue kind of goes back to procedure. One thing that I brought up before and one thing I didn't. Thank you for, I think John Rice talked to the Planning Commission, so at the last sketch plan, which was Tom Bentley's plan, was brought up back up again. It was the only item on the agenda, and the residents were allowed to speak. One thing with that, though, the chair of the committee certainly made the implication that it was only for that particular plan. He said, in this case, we're going to allow public participation, not in all sketch plans in general. So I want to bring that to your attention because I think it is important for all sketch plans. And secondly, this isn't a planning commission, but more a staff thing, is in that case, and I believe in most, if not all cases for sketch plans, public notice was not set out. And if you look at the code for notice in terms of what districts and how far does not differentiate between a sketch plan and a preliminary and a final. So that's not something where the Planning Commission might have latitude like you've implied before with the public comment. That is per our code, that notice needs to be done, and I believe the cost is built into that. So certainly we already were not letting people talk, and by the way we're acting, we weren't even letting them know something was being talked about in their neighborhood. And I think both of those should be corrected for that.
I appreciate your comments. We'll get with John Rice and look into those issues. There are a lot of procedural issues. The Planning Commission needs to come up with a set of rules. Those rules have to come, if they're outside of the purview of the Municipal Planning Code, these are operational rules for their meetings. They need to come to the Board of Commissioners for approval. We still don't have that written set of rules from that board to vote on. But once we get them, we will be glad to vote on those.
Well, that would apply to the
and give
comment.
direction.
That wouldn't apply to the notice. The notice is
You're
more,
right.
yeah.
If that is in the Municipal Planning Code, that would be a separate issue. But Mr. Rice will have to give us advice in that area.
Understand. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Mueller. I live at 134 Woods Lane in Radnor. I'm a parent of two of the players on the boys varsity ultimate team and also the field coordinator for the Radnor Ultimate Frisbee Club. I'm happy to tell you that the Radnor Ultimate boys varsity team not only won first place in the city this spring, but also won 5th place in the prestigious Eastern Championship tournament this past weekend, where 30 teams representing 11 states east of the Mississippi competed. The girls varsity team is also ranked first in the Philadelphia area and also qualified for the championship rounds at Easterns. Radnor Ultimate Team's success is largely due to the hard work of our coaches and our players and the support that the parents offer them. But even the hardest work ethics and the most valuable support from the parents would be nothing if we had not had safe and adequate field space in which to practice. The players and the parents would like to thank all of those in the school district and the township who have worked so hard to support Radnor's Ultimate Teams. Our concern is simple. We still have no firm commitment for specific fields this coming fall and next spring. In order to continue to have a competitive team, the players need regular access to safe and adequate field space for practice and games. While many in the community are concerned that they need more space, please understand we're looking for a space that is safe and adequate for Radnor's Ultimate Teams. So we're not here specifically about the Agnes Irwin lease, but we are here tonight to ask you to support the Radnor kids on the Ultimate Frisbee team by providing field space if or when Memorial Field goes out of service. The township can do this by releasing space that it has presently reserved by the township at the high school or on school district-owned fields like Tennell. Another option is for the township to change the way fields are now allocated. To do this, the township should start to put teams that represent 100% tax-paying families in front of teams from private schools who do not consist of 100% Radnor Township residents. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, I'm going to wrap up public participation.
Move departmental reports to be accepted.
Commissioner comment? Give you another second or two here. Any commissioner comment? There was quite a large set of reports that were provided to the Board of Commissioners. I want to thank staff for all their work on producing these reports and keeping us informed, and the public as well. Any public comment? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. At this point, we'll head into committee reports. Commissioner Mahoney on public safety.
All right, we've already discussed item number A. Item number B is Resolution 2011-68, approving the purchase of a radar feedback display board from Intuitive Control Systems LLC for the Police Department. Superintendent Colawillo, you want to lead us on this one?
Yes, Commissioner. The difference with this particular device, this can actually download speeds and volumes of traffic. It can be used for traffic studies that would assist the traffic safety unit. Also, at this present time, we have a limited number of resources to use when people request this type of equipment. So that is the reason that we are asking for this. If we do get it, the township manager asked today when it could be up and running. If it is approved by the Board of Commissioners, probably within 2 weeks.
I would move the authorization.
Second. Are these powered by solar panels? It looked in the materials like some of them had a solar capacity.
I don't believe these are solar.
So these are just regular AV
Yes.
electricity?
Any
I
further
could weigh
board
on that.
comment?
It says, if you look at the All Traffic Solutions, this document, 1, 2, 3, the fourth one down says solar battery kit and solar panel underneath it.
I know it says solar assist as well.
Okay, so
But it's not solely operated by solar power.
It's been moved and seconded.
Yeah. Any public comment? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7 to none.
The
Noted
next
Commissioner Mahoney's motion, Commissioner Schaefer's second.
The next item is Resolution 2011-41, authorization for the purchase of 223 Bushmaster AR-15 patrol rifles for the Police Department. Superintendent?
Oh, yes, Commissioner. This actually came in a lower bid than we first thought. The total cost for replacing the 12 guns would be $3,780. That's for 12 brand-new rifles after the trade-in, and they would be fitted so they can fit in the cab of the vehicle as opposed to the trunk.
I'll move the authorization.
Second.
Any board comment? This is Resolution 2011-41. There was a typo on the agenda. I apologize for that. All right, any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7 to none. Noting Commissioner Mahoney's motion, Commissioner Spingler's second on that.
The next item is Resolution number 2011-70 regarding authorization for payment to repair accident damages for car number 12 in the amount of $3,235.40 for the Police Department. Superintendent?
Yes, Commissioner. This will be no charge to taxpayers. This would be no taxpayers' money. This is actually an auto accident back in January where Officer Steve Banner was broadsided. Travelers is covering this. It was just a burden to get it approved and also to get the repairs authorized.
I'll move the authorization.
Second.
Okay, any commissioner comment? Seeing none, any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7 to none. Noting Commissioner Mahoney's motion, Commissioner Spingler's second.
That's all we have for public safety.
We have
Thank you.
engineering. The Radnor Township Public Works Department is requesting authorization from the Board of Commissioners to reimburse Radnor Memorial Library for emergency repairs to the HVAC system in the amount of $16,690. This amount reflects the estimate of $17,190 less the first $500 of the repairs to be paid by the library as stated in the lease agreement. And I'll move for the approval.
Second.
Any commissioner comment?
I want to note that these repairs, we'll get them through the summer while we're getting the bids on the whole job. They're not going to cool the whole building. They're going to, this amount of work will cool the public part of the building. The offices and the downstairs will not be repaired for the summer, but all the public spaces will.
Okay. Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7 to none. Noting Commissioner Spingler's motion, Commissioner Schaefer's second.
The Public Works Department is asking for approval to go to bid for a conflict monitor tester. The conflict monitor tester runs the conflict monitor for traffic signals through multiple tests from dual green lights to low AC voltage to ensure the conflict monitor is working to remove any dangerous situations by putting the intersection in flash until the problem can be repaired. The conflict monitor is the main piece of safety equipment for the traffic signal control cabinet. PennDOT and ISMA requirements require testing to be done at least once a year. The new conflict monitor testers also requires laptop and a patch cord for a 12-position conflict monitor, and I'll move authorization to go out to bid.
Second.
Commissioner comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7 to none.
Mr. Chairman.
Spengler's motion, Commissioner Nagel second.
If I may also, we had information received from our traffic engineering firm this morning that there is a grant program that is available. It's called the Automatic Red Light Enforcement Program through the state, which is seeded by fines received from the City of Philadelphia through the Automatic Red Light Camera Enforcement Program. The collected fines are shared between the city and the state. The state awards its share for the funding to Pennsylvania municipalities for transportation enhancement projects, which this would fall in under. So along with this, we'd like to ask the board if they could make a motion that we could go ahead and apply for this grant, which hopefully would offset this expense.
I so move.
Second.
Bob, would this be, would these cameras be installed, if we were to get this grant and be awarded this grant? Would
This
these
is
be
not
installed?
for red light cameras. This is the money that in the city of Philadelphia they have, that they generate the money and a portion goes to the state. The state then allocates that money back to municipalities
I see.
to fund
Okay,
projects similar to this.
I understand.
So it's
Okay.
not for red light
I
cameras.
misunderstood. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Move second. Public comment.
Any public comment? Thanks.
Hi, Jim Schneller, St. David's Park. I heard the word camera. I assumed this was the PennDOT system that goes from Villanova to Old Eagle School Road with the brand-new computer-controlled
Yeah, there's-
stoplights.
There's, this approval that we're making now has nothing to do with cameras.
Yeah. This
We
is
were
a-
talking about, in addition to this, a grant program that would allow us to gain monies to help offset the cost of these programs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7 to none.
Next, I'd like to move the resolution to approve preliminary plans of Eastern University to construct a student union building.
I'm going to recuse myself for this discussion for the same reason I recused myself for the Agnes Irwin discussion. My husband does a very small amount of business selling athletic equipment to Eastern University. I'm awaiting a decision from the State Ethics Commission as to whether this is truly a conflict, and until I know, I've been advised to recuse myself.
Okay, I'm accepting your recusal. Thank you.
Is there a second? Can we get a second?
Second.
Second. Has the applicant agreed to all the conditions?
Bill, if I can just explain, I prepared the resolution. All of these items were in front of you, I think last month, maybe a month and a half. Dan Malloy had presented them. The two issues that we've been working on, the staff's been working on, your traffic engineer's been working on with PennDOT, are the intersection improvements at King of Prussia and Eagle, and then secondly, the loop road that would involve connecting the gymnasium lot, closing off the existing entrance on Fenimore. So the resolution of all that, and you'll get to revisit this prior to final plan approval, is as to that loop road, the applicant in this resolution, paragraph 8, would require financial security to be posted to guarantee that that gets done. The money will be posted in the development agreement because it's going to take some time in order to go through DEP approvals. I think there's stream crossings involved. It's going to take longer to go through that. So assuming you grant final approval at some point, there'll be money and an agreement that'll guarantee that that work gets done in the future. It won't be done before final plan approval, and it won't be done, assuming they get final plan approval, the day they start on the student union. So that was the resolution of that issue, because I don't think we can predict when DEP would, and I believe there's at least 1 or 2 stream crossings, so there's a fairly lengthy permitting process there.
Yeah. Do we know if they've met with DEP yet?
On that issue, I'm not sure whether they've met with DEP on
Nick, can you-
although they're shaking their heads, yes.
Well, could you just come up and answer a question or two? The question, as you're walking towards the podium, is simply, when did you meet with DEP? What was their reaction, if any, and when would you anticipate getting approval, particularly for the loop road? That's what I'm really interested in.
Okay. Yes, we did meet with DEP. We met with them last week on the 12th, and they seemed to be pretty receptive. Thought, it was a doable project, and I would estimate it to be at least a year to get the final approval.
Right. And assuming that is done and the loop road is put in, then what you'd be able to do is to close off or at least put up a barrier, which I suppose would be accessible to emergency vehicles if necessary.
Yes.
But closing off that road that leads from Fenimore into the athletic area.
Yes, that would be the plan.
Well, that's the one thing that I was really hoping you were going to be able to do, and I really thank you and Dr. Black for coming forward on that, because it's going to hopefully solve a lot of problems for the neighbors over there. And I know you're interested in helping them out. So thank you.
Just one minor typo, I think, in the first whereas. That plan is revised on October 18th, 2010, John, instead of 2011.
Oh, okay.
Have it, thank you.
John, by the time we get to the final approval, would we have a selection of the 3 alternatives as to the King of Prussia and Eagle Road?
I think there's going to be a 4th or 5th alternative, Kevin, by the time we get to that point. I mean, I think you're going to need to make a decision at final plan precisely, and again, it's going to be subject to PennDOT approval, but precisely what you want to see there. So we're leaving that open.
Understand why we're leaving it now.
Right, and there's also another issue. There's another project that's been filed recently that may involve further improvements to that intersection. So we're trying to get traffic engineers working with all those parties, but yes, you're going to need to know what that is when you vote on a final plan approval.
As we move to second public
Yeah, public comment.
Hi, Jim Schneller, St. David's. Seeing no one else here to comment, I wanted to mention and ask your enablement of the section of the zoning code which provides for long-term planning for institutional use. I think that in this matter, although it seems completely separate, there is, of course, talk and meetings with the zoning board about quite a large expansion to the west, and I think this enters into it, especially from a township basis. There is talk afoot about linking, at least with pedestrian paths, to the former Valley Forge Military Academy lot, and there's a lot affecting the community. So, if possible, I have yet to see that chapter implemented, but we have a chance to actually have this done in front of the public with as much transparency as possible, and at the same time, Eastern can work towards their best possible solution.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further public comment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0, noting Elaine Schaefer's recusal on that vote. Commissioner Spengler moved and Commissioner Mahoney second on that. Also want to reiterate there was a typo on that Resolution 2011-69 in the first sentence. It was October 18, 2010, not 2011.
That's it under Public Works.
Thank you, Commissioner Spengler. Commissioner Curley, Community Development.
Yes, the first item is authorization to enter into negotiations with a planning service firm. I see there's a recommendation from staff, so either Bob or Matt, would you like to explain your recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Curley. Just to give you a brief history here, on May 3rd, the Board of Commissioners heard proposals from 4 planning firms: SSM Incorporated, Urban Research Development Corporation, Natural Lands Trust, and Cressa Partners, regarding potential hiring for revisions of the Township Code, specifically in Chapter 255 Saldo and Chapter 280 Zoning. Based on that meeting, the administration recommends entering into negotiations with Urban Research Development Corporation.
Very good. So I'll move the authorization.
So just make a point of clarification. Cressa Partners did not come in on that item. That was a typo on the.
Correct.
Actually, I misspoke during that meeting. URS was the 4th firm. They came in at our
Correct.
last meeting to present their position. I'm sorry. We had Commissioner Curley made the motion on that,
Yes.
and was it Spingler second?
Yep.
Matt, can you
Commissioner's
just
comment.
Can you just give us a little bit of logic as to what was the sort of the deciding or tilting factor?
Well, I think they all brought a lot of good things to the table, but I think when we're talking specifically about the priorities of from what I've heard from both the Planning Commission and members of the Board of Commissioner, the Zoning Hearing Board, et cetera, concerned residents, that URDC, they really, I believe they have technical experience in dealing with specifically with parking revisions and also with institutional concerns, and creating, preserving neighborhoods, and also working with institutions and creating good zoning.
I'll just comment. After hearing from the firms, I was quite pleased with URDC, but I also was pleased to hear from URS, and having firsthand experience with them in Garrett Hill. The one thing I would recommend, I will support the staff's recommendation in this because you certainly have more time involved in this process of deciding. But one thing that struck me as being different, the 3 firms that presented on the first night, none of them talked about involving the public in the beginning of the process. And maybe it was because they weren't aware that that's what we may be looking for. I'm not saying that's necessarily what we're looking for. That's what I'd be looking for if it were up to me. URS began that process in Garrett Hill by doing charrettes and doing visioning workshops to get a sense of the community of what would be important to them. I would strongly recommend that if we go the URDC route, that we encourage them to do this visioning workshop in the beginning to get the consensus of the residents, just in addition to what's clearly the need that's being driven by staff. I think it's just good to include the public from the beginning. It will get a lot of help from starting in the beginning, and then it'll flow through to a good process. So that's my only comment.
Well, I had one comment to that. Out of all the firms that presented, only one mentioned the individual property owner's rights, and that was SSM. Now, I'm not opposed to who you picked, but out of all the presentations, they're the only company that mentioned that.
And Kevin, I think I agree with you, and I think that's one more reason to have this visioning workshop, is because that creates an opportunity for the property owners to come in too on that type of a presentation. So I hope that's what we can get done when we go this way. Any further Commissioner comment?
I support the staff recommendation. I thought all 4 were good candidates. URDC was on the top, one of my top 2, and I defer to Matt, who has far more expertise and has been far more involved in this than I have. And I felt, I really, URDC, I felt had done a lot of their homework, had some really good specific ideas in the upfront. They also spoke a lot about natural resource preservation and doing all of our ordinances with an eye toward that, which of course, was very attractive to me. So I'm happy to support this staff recommendation.
Okay, public comment. Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Commissioner Curley moved, Commissioner Spingler second on that.
The next item, I move the introduction of ordinance 2011-12, amending Chapter 226 rental properties delineating between multifamily apartment building owners and owners of single-family and two-family dwellings who may be renting to students.
Second.
Mr. Rice, would you like to comment on this?
This is the what I would call a cleanup ordinance after the prior two actions that the board took. Back in December of 2010, you amended this code to provide for a broader range of rental housing inspections, including the dormitories and the universities. And subsequent to that, then you took the student housing basically out of this existing ordinance and enacted them in your zoning code. This is a revisiting of this 226, editing and basically cleaning up the student housing provisions or anything that relate to student housing that might be inconsistent with what you did in your zoning ordinance. So this has been distributed to the apartment house owners, the non-student housing owners in the township. There's been one meeting in the past couple months with that particular group, and this is ready to be authorized to be advertised.
John, I have a question. I see the addition of the term single-family dwelling throughout this document.
Yes.
And I just want to ask, and then I notice, I think in one section on page 8, it talks, it says any single-family dwelling or two-family dwelling unit. I just want to make sure that this is intended and that we are providing protections under this revision to the all but rare instances where you have two-family dwellings in many of the neighborhoods. Well, I don't want to say many. There are a few examples of two-family dwellings in our neighborhoods. Do we need to make sure that language says single-family or two-family dwellings throughout the document, or should we just?
I mean, the way the zoning ordinance is set up now, you can only have student housing under that zoning ordinance in a single-family dwelling. This provision here has to do with anything that might be pre-existing. If there's any, there may be some pre-existing, and I don't, Matt may know whether there's some pre-existing two-family dwellings that are being used one side or both sides for student housing. I suspect there's probably some, and they're grandfathered in. So that's the only reason that's in there. One of the main items that I had to, from the last time this was in front of the board, it wasn't clear, whether or not we were going to have an issue with the apartment owners. I mean, they're not really governed by the zoning code provisions. That really just deals with student housing and single-family dwelling rental units, not apartment homes. So that was the main thing we were trying to clean up here, along with some other old language that talked about discipline and things that just didn't make any sense in terms of penalties. So this, and again, this amendment's triggered by what you took out of the prior version, put into your zoning, and I couldn't do this until you enacted the zoning amendment. I couldn't go back and clean this up until that was done. So this is the final student housing amendment in front of you, hopefully in the future, several months.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. No further questions from me. Any further board comment? Saying none, any public comment? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0, noting Commissioner Curley's move and Commissioner Spengler's second on that motion. Thank you, Commissioner Curley. Commissioner Higgins, Finance and Audit.
The first item on the agenda is an introduction of an ordinance pertaining to the Agnes Irwin Memorial Field Agreement. I guess, Bob, if you want to...
I'll start off by...
I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself for a potential conflict of interest on the advice of our solicitor.
I'll move the introduction of the ordinance.
I guess, Bob, if you can walk us through sort of the process, the timeline, exactly what you're thinking by introducing this tonight, and I guess what will happen at the June meeting, or what's the plan for the June meeting?
Well, I can just
Okay, John.
procedurally address it. Once you introduce an ordinance, then your charter says that it needs to be advertised once it's introduced. So this will be advertised 10 days, it's got to be in the paper 10 days before your June 20th meeting. So assuming you approve the introduction tonight, it then gets advertised for a public hearing. It'll be advertised in the newspaper, and it'll be back on your agenda for public hearing and possible enactment, June 20th.
And at June 20th, would it include a fully negotiated lease as part of the potential vote?
This is in my view, this is a fully negotiated lease that is part of the introduction of the ordinance tonight.
And at the June meeting, assuming things proceed, would the vote occur in the absence of an agreement from Brandywine and the school district that they're supportive of this, or not?
That's going to be a judgment of the board, but I mean, they have not opposed this. I know they sent a letter and then they withdrew the letter. They have not sent me anything. I know the staff may have been talking to some of the representatives there, but I'm assuming they'll participate. We'll give them notice of the hearing, and we'll hear something from them, hopefully well in advance of June 20th.
And John, two other questions, the ones that I deferred from earlier. Do you want to make any comments regarding Mr. Crawford's memo?
Other than I disagree with his conclusions?
Is a sufficient comment if that's...
No, and I can, I respect his opinion. He's being an advocate for his clients. But I disagree that, the Deed and Donated Act deals with sale of property or changing what has been dedicated for a specific use to some totally different use, which is not what's happening here. So that's my short comment. Nothing else.
The opinion that you've given to us, is there any reason, I know you don't want to release it because of, I think based on past process, is there a reason, either for precedence or because of the nature of the advice, that it shouldn't be released, or would you be comfortable if this group agreed that it could be released I guess?
Well, there's two issues with any legal advice that I put in writing to the board or otherwise. One, it's protected by the attorney-client privilege, which it's not up to me to waive that. It's up to the majority of the board. And secondly, at the last meeting we had where this was discussed, I heard at least 3 people stand up and threaten to file a lawsuit. Not specifically, but there was an implied threat in all of those comments if the board moved forward with this. So that gives me some pause to give anyone, whether it's residents, a developer, anyone that has giving them your legal advice, it's sort of like showing them everything before they file a suit. So, and I think it sets a bad precedent, quite frankly.
I'm okay with your answer. I just wanted to understand your recommendation.
Any board comment? Well, I'll comment. Maybe I'll get everyone else started. I have to admit, when this idea first came to us several months ago, we were asked if we would be interested in this, and as a result of that, we charged our solicitor to draft and enter into a negotiation with Agnes Irwin School. And at that time, I envisioned the typical negotiating process where there's consideration involved in the deal, financial consideration, and other forms of consideration. And I have to admit, when we first started this, I imagined that consideration to be in the realm of maybe in the magnitude of $120,000, $150,000 a year in rent. I simply treated, from my own perspective, I treated it as a real estate deal. The Agnes Irwin is a local school. that is looking to site or locate a field in the vicinity of their school. And in those terms, they're looking for access to real estate. So from my point of view, if we're going to grant them any access or use of our fields or space, that there should be some type of financial consideration in that deal, because the land is not owned by me, it's owned by the taxpayers. And I represent the taxpayers, so it was important for me to make sure that I represent all the taxpayers. And in doing so, I remain fairly steadfast in the concept that there had to be financial remuneration in this deal for all the taxpayers. It wasn't enough to have use conveyed to us in terms of use of a turf field, but there had to be financial benefit to all taxpayers. Through this process, we've all learned a lot. We've looked very closely at the Parks and Recreation programs that we run. We've looked at field use. I think a lot of us have learned a lot of things. Some of those issues are, I think, still in the discovery phase even at this point. We have a pretty good understanding, but I think as time goes on, we'll have a very good understanding of every specific minute of time that is used. But in short, I initially was somewhat opposed to the plan, but as the details came forward and as the negotiation continued, I became more interested in it because I did consider it an opportunity for a win-win. I don't like to use that term too often because it's generally not true. But when I look closely at this arrangement, this lease, not only does the lease have $35,000 cash per year in financial remuneration for the taxpayer, but it also has a savings of at least $21,000 a year in field maintenance that we currently spend, and throw in a few more thousand a year for seeding when we do that. There's some additional maintenance at the site that may be shared with the two parties. So when it's all said and done, the staff have done a lot of work providing the Board of Commissioners both qualitative and quantitative analysis of this deal. They've spent hundreds of hours to do this. And even after that, I was still willing to look at this from both sides and understand it fully. And at this point, the staff is giving us a financial number of about $70,000 a year in financial benefit to the township. This is both quantitative and this is tangible. This is $35,000 in cash, $20,000 to $30,000 of maintenance savings that we will save on this property. And for that reason, we are approaching what I had envisioned in terms of what the true transfer of value it is to the taxpayer. My original analysis did a comp. I comped the land of what Agnes Irwin would have to spend to purchase land and then what they would incur in interest costs over the term of that loan. I then deducted the costs or the value that they're transferring to us in use of a turf field. We're certainly going to gain between 500 and 1,000 hours of use on a turf field. And if I use the market rates for renting turf fields and then do the math and I subtract that off of the total value, I get down into the vicinity of the $70,000 a year of value that's being conveyed to the taxpayer. And for that reason, I'm willing to support moving ahead to the next step. I think I have personal thoughts about this, but I don't get a chance to vote my personal thoughts. I was elected by taxpayers, and my job is to vote on their behalf. I'm personally against turf. I don't like turf. I don't think it's necessarily what I would want my kids to play on, but that's my personal opinion. What's become clear to me after receiving hundreds of emails from the sporting community is that A, they need field space, B, the fields that we currently have been beaten down, and if we don't find a way to relieve those fields and give them a chance for recovery, we will lose use of our natural fields. And I think in general, many taxpayers who have children support this. And again, my job is to enact the majority opinions of the township residents. And I understand this will not make people happy if this moves forward. I understand that some people will be fully in disagreement with this, and they have a right to be, and I'm glad they're here, and I hope they voice their opinions to that. In addition, I think there are a lot of people in this community that really want this, and they're not all here tonight because maybe they have a sense that the board is going to enact something and move forward. Anyway, these are all of my opinions. I've certainly tried to listen to both sides, and I really have gone full swing. I went from one end to the other on this. I'm not going to say my mind is made up, meaning a month from now, if I'm here to vote on this, I will then reconsider the facts. As it stands right now, I will not be present for the next meeting. I have a trip planned to Asia, and I do not have any way to vary that date. So it looks like I will not be here. But if this does not get enacted at the next meeting, I will be certainly glad to listen to additional information if it comes forward and then vote on that information after that fact. So that's my entire opinion. I think, I do think it's a win-win for taxpayers. This puts a pretty good sum of money on the table for taxpayers. If you look at $70,000 a year for 15 years, you're approaching $1 million. And if it goes beyond that, there will be additional savings for taxpayers. In the current economic climate, I don't know how I could walk away from that. It would be very hard for me to say this is not good for taxpayers. So with that, I'll turn it over to my fellow board members if anyone would like to make a comment.
Yeah, I'm going to support it also. I think there's enough value in it. So from the hours, the rent, some back-end protections, and the subjective value that the community communicated to me. So all things considered, for me, there's enough value, and I intend to support it.
With that, I will open it up to public comment.
Good evening. Anna Marie Hessman, Rosemont resident. I've been following this debate for a little bit off and on with a lot of interest. I wasn't able to be part of previous debates about turf. And I have to say up front that I'm very supportive of athletic activity. When I was a little girl in the township, I was the only girl for 3 years on Radnor Little League Baseball. I was several years on soccer. Middle school, I participated both in the boys soccer and in girls lacrosse. So I know how important the fields are, although we were fine with dirt, we were also in a little bit of a population dip. I also have a lot of sympathies for the neighbors who've come up repeatedly because I'm a direct neighbor of Villanova, and being right next to a stadium can be challenging. I realize a great amount of effort and analysis have been recently expended: financial, legal, traffic, community. What I want to know is where the environmental analysis is, the complete health and safety analysis. I've started trying to read up on the turf field. Very hard to do because the general information about the turf, what kind of turf installation is being put in, not posted for the public. Does that little thing where you can put up documents, does that work?
You can move that box to the side and any document.
Okay.
Yeah, just though the camera's on the ceiling pointing down. So
it's here?
Yeah, pretty much the whole
Face up?
table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent, thank
go.
you.
Yep.
I went to the website, the Radnor website, and
Anna Marie, before I forget, would you not mind signing in? I meant to announce earlier tonight that we're requiring everyone to sign in to help in the production of the minutes. Everyone that speaks tonight, so you normally have to state your name, address. If you don't mind at least printing your name, so we'll have that for the record.
is it back there?
No, it's actually right on the table right here. It should be on the podium here.
This is just a screenshot from the website. I've been trying to figure out when the Parks and Rec Board was going to be talking about this throughout the spring. And as you can see, when we focus in on this, there have been no agendas posted since last year and no minutes posted for a very long time. I don't know what the legal responsibility is, but I request that information be out there for those of us trying to find out what's going on. I don't have the cable stations. I can't be streaming video online for hours and hours and hours to figure out what's going on. I need to be able to scan through documents and find things when there's something important going on. The next thing I found that I was a little horrified about is a resolution from 2008 when turf was last being discussed. I believe Mr. Mahoney, you were the president when this was signed. To my knowledge, there is no committee in existence to support this resolution. I have to read it.
Yeah, it was the committee that I had recommended follow the field and make a determination and keep up on the environmental aspects of it.
Yes.
And I talked about that at the end of that particular year, and there was nobody who was willing to step up to the plate. I think it's something that we should follow up with because it was part of a resolution approving the Prevost field, right?
What concerns me is that all of the research that I've seen from that year, the debate from that year, the things I've found online, which again are fairly generalized because I don't have the specifics on the turf installations existing in Radnor. I don't have the specifics on the turf installation that's proposed. But without monitoring, we can't know that this is safe. And among other things, there is a CDC alert for certain kinds of artificial turf that as the fibers degrade, and these are nylon polyethylene blend fibers that are the fake grass. I don't know if that's part of the installation that's proposed, but as some of them degrade, they release lead. And I realize that the CDC also released a zombie apocalypse alert this week, but that was really just to get everybody to concentrate on hurricane preparedness. They weren't serious about the zombies. So I don't have children playing on this turf, but honestly, I think those who are eager to have their children out there playing would also want to be assured that the safety of their children is also being kept in mind. Most of the exposures, which I'm hoping Maya, who's here, will be speaking much more eloquently on the details of the dangers that maybe we don't know yet. There are lots of data gaps, but there were also probably data gaps early on in the cigarette smoking lung cancer debate. So just because you don't know that a risk is serious doesn't mean it's not there. And I really, really request that we form the committee, that there is ongoing environmental, or perhaps an environmental analysis of the specific turf installation that's proposed here before it's put in, that we find a way to implement monitoring of all the existing turf installations. I believe we have 4. I don't know if they're the exact same kind, and how they're doing over time. Possibly partnering with our fine educational institutions, including Aggies. They could, science class project, it would be an excellent learning opportunity for people to go out there and start monitoring their playing fields, and maybe that would be a little bit of a cost savings with staff. And that we release the specifics of what these field installations are to the public. And that's all I have to ask. Thanks.
Thank you. And Anna Maria, I think the sign-in, is that clipboard the sign-in sheet? Thank you. I appreciate that. That helps our secretary do the minutes. We've been struggling getting the spelling right for about 6 months now. It's very hard to do over the cameras. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ina Shea. I live at 690 Glen Mary. I'm here to oppose the proposed lease to Agnes Irwin of Memorial Field on 3 dimensions. But first I want to say that I don't have any quarrel at all with Agnes Irwin. I believe it to be an asset to our community and a wonderful educational institution, and it churns out elite graduates. So I don't want anything I say to be misunderstood. So I'm here as a parent. I have 3 kids, 2 of whom have already passed through the Radnor Township Educational District. I have 1 who has 1 more year to come within the school system. I'm distressed at the thought that there is going to be field space taken out of circulation from our school district, frankly, even though this is going to have very little effect on my own family. I live in a cul-de-sac, and there are 8 kids who are younger than mine. And I'm very distressed to think that a playing field within walking distance of our house and 2 of the schools that they are going to attend are going to be taken out of circulation in the hours immediately following school. I also take exception to the repeated characterization of Memorial Field as being unplayable, because I know, based on my own daughter's experience, her team is very happy every occasion they have a chance to practice on that field, because they can walk to it from the high school. It's not unplayable. Not only do these high school students play on it, but there are little league teams, soccer, junior soccer people playing there very happily. So let's drop that unplayable terminology from the rhetoric as we're discussing the field. Could it be improved? Certainly. Okay, but it is playable. Next, I would like to speak in my situation as a neighbor of the field. I live at 690 Glen Mary Road, one of the proximate properties, residential properties to this field. I remember very well 20 or so years ago when, probably it was a little less than 20 years ago, when this property was first donated to Radnor Township. And it was donated, I believe, first as a passive open space or passive recreational space. I'm sure there are records of this. However, I remember specifically that the conversation mentioned that there would never be lights on this field, that assurances were made to the neighbors that there would not be lights on this field. And many of my neighbors, to my surprise, opposed the donation to the township because they feared there would be lights on the field. And I naively thought, no, this would never happen because this was a promise made. Now, I realize many of the players in the school district, many of the parties in the tripartite agreement, the school district, the Board of Commissioners, and what is now called the Brandywine Realty, whatever, Corporation, have changed. However, many of us in the neighborhood are still here, and we remember this, and we remember this assurance, and I will be very chagrined if this is not indeed the case, because I advocated in my neighborhood for the donation, for the acceptance of the township of this space for recreational use. Lastly, I would like to speak in my capacity as a taxpayer. I believe it is a very serious thing to commit public property for 15 to 20 years or more, to tie the hands of future commissioners, taxpayers, voters in an agreement. I believe this of Memorial Park. I believe it of the Willows. And I think this is a very serious enterprise that you are taking for a certain amount of money. especially when we're talking about something like a scarce resource, such as a field. As far as I know, there is diminishing property in Radnor Township for public use. And why you would commit that for the next generation of children who are my neighbors, the 8 kids on my cul-de-sac, who will not have an opportunity to play on this field in the prime hours after school, I think is something that you should seriously consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Maya Vamrasam. I'm here in my capacity as a resident of Radnor Township, and I'll happily sign your piece of paper, but it won't help anybody with the spelling of my name because they won't be able to read it. But I live at 716 South Roberts Road in Bryn Mawr, which is in fact in the township. I did want to speak to this. I'm not speaking to the artificial turf issue in my capacity as the Delaware Riverkeeper when talking about other fields in the township which were in close proximity to streams. I spoke very strongly about that issue. I feel very deeply about artificial turf and its environmental ramifications and its health and safety ramifications for children, particularly in these days where we're having hotter and hotter days and you have such extreme temperatures on artificial turf fields. It's a true health and safety risk for children, particularly smaller children and those playing sports. When the township gets its act together to honor the promise that was made, thanks to Commissioner Mahoney, for an environmental assessment of the existing artificial turf field at Provost Field, I will happily make a presentation to that group to give them some guidance on what they should be looking at and what they should be considering and what they should be reporting back to all of you, because I have a lot of information on that front. But as a resident, I have to say that this really is, as I said before, last time I spoke before you, this really is a betrayal of trust. This property, it's a betrayal of trust to the community, and it's a betrayal of trust to the donor who entrusted this property to Radnor Township and all of its commissioners down the line to protect it and honor the gift that was made to the township and to the Radnor residents. I brought the wrong file with me tonight, so I can't pull out the appropriate documentation. But the documentation about the property is very clear, that it's intended for public use. However the public sees fit to use it, whenever the public sees fit to use it. And you are taking this property from the public and giving it to a private entity. You might be doing it for a dollar figure, but you're still taking away that use, that enjoyment, that free access. You're taking that away. That was promised. So you're taking that away from Radnor residents. But also, as I said, you're taking something very important away from the donor. When the donor gives their private property, either in fee simple, the actual real property itself, or funds to buy a particular parcel of property, it does it with the understanding that you are going to honor the commitments and the promises that were made to them at the time of that giving. This donor gave the property for the intent, or with the intent that it would be used forever by Radnor residents as they see fit, without limitation by private interests. You are betraying that trust, that promise, that commitment that was made to the donor all those years ago. And I've seen this before in Radnor Township, and I see it coming down the pike with other properties, and I don't see how you can expect anybody in Radnor Township to continue to trust the township with resources to buy additional open space or with actual real estate that they want to turn over, knowing that you could at any time change your minds, flip, and dishonor the promises that were made at the time that gift was given to the township. So, Commissioner Fisher, you talk about representing the interests of Radnor residents. When somebody gives you a gift, when there's an agreement, when there's an exchange, the commitment that was made is I will give you this property, and in exchange, you will protect it in perpetuity for use by Radnor residents. That is the most significant commitment that was made at the time of the gift of this property. The promise made to the donor. And you have an obligation to honor that, all of you. Otherwise, nobody else is going to give you any property or money to buy more property, and I know you want some. I have to say that the process, because of the failure of the one commissioner to take herself out of the process early on, really has been tainted. I don't know how involved Commissioner Schaefer has been in the deal cutting here. I know she was a very active, almost aggressive advocate for this proposal. I would be surprised if she wasn't intimately involved in the deal cutting that took place. So with her only now being taken out of the process, I think we need a lot more information about her level of involvement in the deal that's before you tonight. And so I would ask for that information to be provided, because I was quite stunned at the strength of her advocacy over this deal. And maybe now I have a little bit more information as to why. With regards to the releasing of the legal memo, as you've been told by your solicitor, you're the client. It's up to you whether or not you release that memorandum. And I would suggest to you it's a very wise thing to do, and it's very wise for a couple of reasons. One, just trust in your residents to use information that they paid for. If it really is the most solid legal analysis and wards off the information, for example, that you got earlier this evening about alternative legal interpretations, then if there is in fact somebody considering legal action, if that memo and that legal position is really that strong, it'll probably stop the litigation before it happens. So the release of the information is an opportunity to save resources by sharing information and saying to people, hey, you don't really have a good case, and maybe making them think twice. Or making it very clear to everybody that in fact the case is not all that strong, that the information that you got earlier is much more credible than perhaps has been suggested tonight, and will make others be able to come forward with better information to help you better assess whether or not this is a good deal for you. The other thing is there's really no reason not to release the information in terms of attorney-client. If somebody, in anticipation of litigation, if somebody files litigation, then as soon as those first briefs get filed, it's all going to be out there anyway, because your legal analysis is going to be in the brief. So you're going to have told everybody anyway. Why not do it sooner rather than later in the interest of good discourse and saved resources and better information? I would like to speak to, if this is, in fact, as I heard tonight, this is considered a final lease that you should be deeming fully complete. I came tonight, I sat tonight, fully distracted by all the good conversation going on about other issues, went through it, and found a lot of concerns that I would like to bring to your attention to suggest that it really is not ripe for moving forward. It does have in here money, that you're getting some money. It also seems to me that you're getting more responsibilities in terms of required police oversight, and also a greater obligation in terms of maintenance and upkeep costs, which I'll point to when we get there. And again, I only have a few points because I was reading it during this distracted meeting. There is a suggestion that the use of this field, I'm sorry? Oh, I thought maybe you had a question. There has been a lot of discussion about, and this doesn't actually go specifically to the terms of this, but there's been a lot of discussion about how the plans for this field don't impede public use and enjoyment. There are a couple areas where it indicates to me that that's not so, and so I just want to highlight them as well as we go through them. Page 3, item C, section 1, where it talks about the various facilities, the billboards, the lighting, the seating. Right, if in the off times, one were to be allowed to use this field, which actually it cannot be used by terms of the contract, and I'll point those out to you later, all of that seating and all of that structure does actually impede the free and easy use of the field the way it's used today. So when people are going around the track, you've got these big bleachers or whatever it is they're going to put up. I mean, those are structural obstructions that are going to change the nature of the experience at that park. I am not one to raise crime issues because people always do it whenever you want to plant a tree. But I just suggest to you, it just changes the entire nature and experience of that park. Page 4, Section C, subparagraph 3A. As agreed by the parties, any repairs, residing, or sealing costs shall be shared equally by AIS and the township. I don't know what that means. That's really wide open language. You need a lot more clarity and limitation on what that obligation entails. And it does say, so we're talking about artificial turf fields here, so the replacement gets addressed later, but if you have damage to an artificial turf field that's significant, the cost can be significant. Suddenly now here the township is buying into those repairs, whatever they might be. Again, this is very
Mr.
wide
Chairman,
open.
if I may, just as pointed that I think that the sharing cost is the parking lot resurfacing or sealing and the restroom building. I think those are the only costs that I think are spelled out in here.
Well, what it says here is item number 3, and I hear you that later it speaks to the parking lots, but in this subsection,
3A deals with the comfort station. Comfort station, in one of the changes, must have dropped out of there, but that is the comfort station only.
okay,
3A.
well, it says 3, AIS, blah, 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 replacement of the field. So again, over there you do. I mean, you've identified a significant deficiency because the way this reads.
It's been in 3 other drafts.
It doesn't matter if it's been 3 other drafts.
Let me just finish for the boards. It's been in all the other drafts. This draft, the word comfort station, should go back into that 3A because that's what the discussion has been since it's been in front of the board before.
Well, thank goodness I got up to point out that deficiency. The other thing is it talks about as agreed upon by the parties. What if it's not agreed? There is no provision that I could see in this contract for those situations where there is not agreement, whether it's this provision or other provisions. Any well-rounded contract that I've ever dealt with, has a dispute resolution provision at a minimum. And I did not see one in here. And there are lots of areas for dispute. There are annual meetings about the schedule. There are agreed upon responsibilities for upkeep and repairs, for police oversight. And yet, if there's disagreement, I don't know how you're going to address that, except maybe yell at one another. Item C, this is page 5, C4B. Here is where it says, and there's another place where it says it as well. The use of the artificial turf field shall be limited to AIS school events and Radnor Township sponsored events. Any other organization desiring to utilize the field, cutting out some words, and amenities shall pay a rental fee, rental fees, and then talks about how they'll be taken in the cost of the lights. That's a very specific exclusion of public use from the property. It does happen elsewhere. I'll point it out as we get there. Page 6, page 6, so that's C8. It talks about stormwater management facilities. I understand that it talks about the management facilities having to be in compliance with township, state, and federal laws. I think that's a given. I would suggest to you, while Radnor is working so hard to be a leader in stormwater management issues, and is struggling so hard to deal with massive volumes of stormwater runoff from developed sites, that if you're going to have this kind of agreement, rather than leave it up to AIS to do the bare minimum to comply with law in terms of their stormwater facilities, how about mandating that they use an infiltration facility to the greatest degree possible so that we can minimize stormwater runoff, minimize pollution runoff, and help prevent and minimize downhill flooding for residents that are down from this property, whatever this property does or would or in the future contribute. Have that obligation in here. It seems to me that that would make sense and be a really good ask. On page 7, so we're at C9. Here it talks about, I just mentioned this for everybody. The last sentence in item 9, furthermore, neither Radnor nor AIS shall obstruct or prevent the Radnor Township School District from using the existing parking lot or overhead walkway for school-related facilities. I note to you that at a recent facilities committee meeting from one of the school district committees, they put on their wish list to find a field for the Frisbee team that you heard about earlier. So the school district is putting on its wish list the creation, it was, as I understand it, the creation of a new field for known uses in the township. And yet here we have this field that has a connection to the school district that we're taking the primary use of and giving it away. It seems really strange. We're putting the need for a new field on a wish list at the school district. We're giving in large part away an existing field that we already have control of. Okay, in D1, this is where you do have some reservation of use by Radnor Township residents when the field's not being used for sponsored programs by AIS and the township. But when you look at all of the provisions leading up to that, there really is a contradiction because it very clearly says in a number of ways and places, including the one provision that I read to you, that only AIS and township-sponsored events can use that field. So there's an innate contradiction in the language of the contract, which I don't know how it would be resolved. If anybody battled over it, who's to say right now whether the arbiter of the outcome is going to say, yes, we'll go with the public provision, or no, we'll go with the provision that's just for AIS and township use. So it seems to me that that's an inherent conflict in language in provisions that needs to be addressed. In D3, when it talks about police services, it talks about AIS providing security as it deems necessary to supervise their educational and athletic events. Two things. If we're going to have all of these new structures and facilities on these grounds, I suspect it's going to require a lot more police supervision and oversight to make sure things don't happen there. That responsibility, as I read this contract, is going to fall to the township. So you're going to have increased surveillance costs in the off times by Radnor Township Police Services. That's an increased cost that I'd be concerned about. The other thing is that I would say in this provision, again, D3 on page 8, is it says Radnor shall provide police patrols as deemed necessary by the Radnor Township Superintendent of Police, and AIS shall provide security as it deems necessary to supervise their stuff. What if the Radnor Township Superintendent of Police disagrees with what is deemed necessary to oversee or address the AIS happenings, events at the field? How are you going to resolve that dispute? Because there is no dispute resolution provision in here, and there's no clarity as to who gets the final say over police oversight and these kinds of important safety issues. There is in here the $35,000. I think that that's quite a pittance small amount of money for this field, including for, regardless of what AIS is doing to it, and people think of that as valuable or not valuable. $35,000 is not very much money. And if you take, and this is me sitting back here with my pen and paper and my brain, 35,000, if you add up the hours that AIS is promised in this contract, not including the additional hours they're going to negotiate during that annual meeting, by my assessment, they're paying between $35 and $40 an hour for the use of this field. If you add $900,000 worth of amenities, then you're up to around $125 an hour, and yet you have all acknowledged that these kinds of fields are much more valuable than that. So it seems to me and that's again only for those hours that are reserved to them in this contract. And I rounded, frankly, to my detriment and to AIS's benefit in terms of the cost. So I suggest to you that $35,000 is nowhere near what you should be talking about because of everything that is being given up, in addition to the value, quote unquote value, perceived value of this kind of field. So I think, Commissioner Fisher, you need to go back to your $150,000 a year figure for everything the township's going to lose, all of the increased costs it's going to incur if you were to go ahead with this. But again, ending where I began, I think it's a real betrayal of trust. It's a betrayal of trust to the promises to the public, to Radnor Township, and it's a true betrayal of trust to the promise that was made to the donor of this property at the time the property was entrusted to the Radnor Township Commissioners to protect in perpetuity for Radnor Township residents. And I think that's awful. So I hope you'll reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. Jim Cornelio, 135 Barclayton Road, Garrett Hill, Radnor Township. As you may know, I am an officer and serve on the board of many of the Radnor youth sports organizations, the Radnor Soccer Club, Radnor Wayne Little League, Radnor Youth Basketball, the Radnor Youth Sports Foundation. I want to limit myself. I've already been here a number of times before, and I'm just going to give the same facts very briefly. I will limit myself to the facts. Paul Totero, who is the head of the fields for Radnor Township, shut down Radnor Memorial Field, or he told the soccer club that we couldn't use it last fall because it's in poor condition. The north end of the field is a pit. If you drive by this field on Matson's Ford Road, it actually looks good. But if you stop your car and you walk the field, you'll see that the north end, about a third of the field is unusable. That prohibition of the use continued through the spring. The youth lacrosse programs were not allowed to use that field. So what we have is Paul said that any sport that uses a ball couldn't use the field because of its poor condition. So that let the door open for Ultimate Frisbee. I think they have about 60 players, and they were able to use the field. They would lose the field if the lease gets approved, but for the time that they would use the field, which is after school from 3 to 5 or whatever the hours are, I suspect that there are other fields in the township that the Parks and Rec department could find a field for them. By my numbers, Bob Miklas usually precedes me before the lectern. He's not here, but in going through the numbers, I believe that Agnes Irwin will get over 700 hours of time on this field through the year. The community part will be over 1,200 hours. And then there's another 240 hours, which I think is that's 6 hours during the summer that Radnor Township and Agnes Irwin would share. So that to me is an increase, a huge increase for the public use of this field. We're not, except for Ultimate Frisbee and a couple of soccer teams and a few of the younger Radnor Wayne Little League teams, that's all the use we get. So this is going to be a tremendous increase in the hours that we can use that field. Going to some of the points about the lights, Radnor Soccer Club had portable lights on this field for 3 years, 2007, 2008, 2009. Each, we got the approval from Parks and Rec. After the first year, we checked again to see if anyone had complained. No one had, they told us no one had complained. And then after the second year, we did the same thing. So 3 years we used the portable lights. Were not as high as permanent lights, but there were no complaints. The new generation of lights are able to focus, presumably the ones that Agnes Irwin will put on the field will be focused on the field. And my understanding is if you could be 20 feet off the field and you'll be in the dark. So the residents are not going to be able to see these lights. As far as obstructions, my understanding is that the walking path has to be maintained so that it is unobstructed for anyone who does walking. And walking in Radnor Township at that field at Tennell and Garrett Hill, there's an increase in it, and we'll have. There won't be any obstructions. I don't know. On another evening, someone got up here and referred to a stadium was being built on this field, and that's ludicrous. Agnes Irwin now uses Tennell Field for its softball, and they've been using it for a good number of years. And I think that's one of their top sports. I think they've won the Interact for the last several years. So it's one of their top programs. And if you go to Tennell during their games, there's maybe 10 cars there. There's not a lot of parents that come there. The opposing team gets bussed in, and I don't know whether Agnes Irwin gets bussed in, but I think they'll probably, if they're using Memorial Field, they'll probably get bussed in. So actually, there'll be a decrease in traffic over what would be otherwise. So I think, obviously, the Radnor Youth Sports programs would like to see this field go through because we hope to have more use of the field. I mean, that's, you know that. But I think it's a win, it's a benefit for the Radnor Township residents as well. We're going to be able to use a field more often, not just the youth sports programs, but also the community use. Whereas now we're not allowed to use the field except for limited occasions. So I'm in support of that, and I hope that you will, look at these facts and when you come to your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. John Williams from 676 Glenmary Road, resident and business taxpayer in Radnor. I wanted to cover a number of different issues here. I think there's some specific issues here which have been discussed, whether or not there should be turf on this field, what are the stormwater issues, what are the field conditions, how many kids want to play what sport, what are the field availabilities, that sort of thing. But I think when you really look at this, it's essential to distill it down to the essential elements of what this really involves. And the first thing, I'm not the first to state this, but I keep coming back to the idea of how can we take something which was deeded to the township, entrusted to the township as a public good, and then take that public good and lease it to a private party. Now, it's been clear that there are some benefits to the township residents from this agreement. However, I would also argue in the case of the Fox Chase Cancer Center that there would have been significant benefits to the residents of Philadelphia, the same residents to whom the family, I think it was Burholm, I think that was the estate, was deeded in trust as a park back in the 19th century. The fact that there may be benefit to some township residents, to me, is immaterial. The key argument is that we are taking something that is public and turning it, if even in a small portion, into something that is private. That, to me, is the first issue. We've had an attorney come up before the board tonight and say that, in his opinion, this is not lawful. We have the township solicitor saying that he believes that it is. I would like to ask the board whether we have gotten any other opinions from the township saying whether or not this is legal, because it is entirely possible, with all due respect to the solicitor, that he may be wrong. And so I would like to ask the board, with something as controversial as this, that another legal opinion be obtained post haste, because it's quite possible, again, respectfully submitted to the solicitor, that he may be incorrect. That's the first thing I would like to suggest. The second thing I would like to suggest is, when I look at this money, $35,000, that's not a lot of cash. What is it, about $2,900 a month? What if I were to come up and offer you to give you $4,000 a month? I could do it. I'm sure it would be an option. What would you say to me? And what if I were to come up with a plan, that delivered $70,000 in benefit to the township? You would laugh me out of this room. You would not even talk to me. But that's essentially what we're talking about here. This is a private school. I have nothing against private schools. But I think to myself, what kind of town are we becoming? And what kind of country are we becoming when we can take a public good and give it over to a private school? There is something just fundamentally wrong with this. And I'm not some of you may know I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Republican here. And I just don't get this. Where is this coming from? It is so bizarre to me. I think back. I think back on. I grew up in Lower Merion. I've lived here for a number of years, and it's just so strange. It's one thing to sell yourself, but it's an even worse thing to sell yourself cheaply. So if we have decided that we're going to put ourselves out to bid in the supposed benefit for the taxpayers, the masses of people who support this yet don't come out after working long hours to pay their business privilege tax, then I think we should really see, have we put this lease out to bid? Have we advertised? If we are truly dedicated to providing the most benefit to the taxpayers, why are we just writing up this lease for a private school? Why don't we go to Baldwin? Why don't we go to Shipley? Why don't we go to the softball league of the Radnor Corporate Center? If we're going to sell ourselves, if we're going to put ourselves on the block, as a taxpayer, I want to get the most money. We have not tried to sell this to anybody else. And it seems to me that would be a natural thing to do. We're rushing into this. I have great concerns about one of the commissioners on this board, before being recused, having some, questionable connections to this. I think this.
Excuse me a second. That's the second time we've heard that tonight, and it's a totally specious claim. Commissioner Schaefer recused herself the moment she found out that her husband did business. Prior to that, she didn't even know. So her decisions could not have been colored by that instance. And you are insulting
I just said I had a question.
Yeah, well, I just answered your question.
I withdraw the concern. This is moving awfully fast. I would like the board, the township, to put this out. You know, if we've decided that we're going to sell ourselves, let's get the highest price. That's the first thing. And then I want to reiterate, I would very much, as a taxpayer, given that the township could be putting itself at risk here, I would really like to get another legal opinion. Because it's concerning to me that the legal opinion that the township has may not be correct. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Schneller, St. David's Park. I consider myself a neighbor, or at least an active user of the park. And I've said a lot, so I'm not going to repeat anything. But I wanted to point out that I just wanted to go right to the lease, if I could. Everything I'm about to say are things in the lease that have gotten more wide open for AIS than less. And many, many people have spoken. And I've never seen it before where something that's before you actually got stringent. It didn't respond at all to what people said. But you've heard most of the details about that. However, in 2A, you have a stipulation provided that the time may be extended for games in progress until completion of the game. You have no implement here for when weather pops up, for who the next in line, how the next person in line on a given schedule is going to compensate. And it seems to me if you're going to have hour allotments, people better be told to get off the field by 5 after. You may have to, in other words, order the users that their teams may have to change their rules a little bit. I was wondering if you could give us some basic facts about what percentage of the students at AIS live in Radnor Township. I think that at least that would really help you with your decision making. If you could go please to 3G. There's now talk about a scoreboard. And I hear talk tonight about there's a feasibility for bleachers. This indicates to everybody in the township there has been something in the works from the start. If people came in and objected to lights for an hour or 2 hours of the last 2 meetings, all of a sudden there's a scoreboard. That's also an extremely heightening element of the appearance of the place as far as a public park. Now, you've stated your intent is to keep up the park-like nature, to keep up the public nature. A scoreboard is just going to convert it to AIS's field. And as one citizen said, I have nothing against this school. However, I have to reveal that I'm looking into records of the AIS's recently approved expansion on their campus. They dealt much with encroachment on a particular stream. We just joined the Darby Creek, some sort of Darby Creek watershed at the last.
Jim, can you keep this relevant to the motion that's on the table? This is for the approval of a lease. It has nothing to do with any other property that the partner has ownership of.
Well, this happens to also be the Darby Creek watershed. And I bring it up because to my knowledge, AIS has falsified information in their application for their Ithan Avenue expansion.
Jim,
and I'm claiming
Schneller,
bad faith.
Mr. Schneller, I think you best probably say in your opinion before you make statements like that. That really has nothing to do with any activity at their site on Ithan Avenue, has nothing to do with the activity that's described in this lease. So I prefer that you keep on topic and stick with what the motion is
Right,
on the
okay, I
table.
was just making a point that it's the same creek. They apparently didn't make any notification to the 12 townships down creek. And it's disappointing. And to hear revelations tonight that there are possible chemical drawbacks with artificial turf, I wanted to bring it up. If there is an assistance in paying for paving of the lot, I have to bring this up. It was true with the first version of the lease that came out, but they're referring to an Exhibit B, which is the photo. It's not with tonight's exhibit, but is this photo. That was with the lease that was given out at the last hearing, and there's no indication of what they're speaking of. The reference is on page. There's one reference on D1. They're peppered throughout the document, but the specific items they're talking about are not in the diagram. In the prior lease, it spelled out that the section immediately to the King of Prussia Road side of the driveway that leads to the restrooms was part of this. So if we're paying for half of paving, essentially the taxpayers would be paying for paving of parkland, and that is like the ultimate insult I've ever heard.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of
Jim.
clarity, I think we're resurfacing the current parking lot. It's not
Is it just
paving
cars?
over it. Yeah, whatever is currently existing, I believe that's what's concerned, not paving over any parkland.
Right.
All right, thank you, Jim. There are other people who want to speak, okay?
All right, I'm getting there. At the peak of this insult to our taxpayer rights is the fact that there's no mention of who's paying for police guidance at that intersection. Now, we know how busy it is on Matson Ford, and if we're talking about activities with bleachers and scoreboards letting in dozens of people and letting out from 3 till 6 o'clock, you're going to need a manual police officer there, or at least someone working a light. And there's no mention of those costs here. I know that you're getting a lot of information here, and I admire the fact that you're able you seem to be taking notes and taking things into consideration. I hope that the facts will show to you like they're showing to most of the township.
All right, Jim, there's other people who want to speak. If you don't have anything else to say, thank you.
Yeah, Jim, in consideration of other people's time, I appreciate if you wrap up.
All right, in closing, I would like to say that Agnes Irwin really decided at some point to utilize that lot they have on Ithan Avenue. I don't think that we should go out of our way to assist them. And the zoning code and the planned institutional district really does not intend.
You're on Ithan Avenue. We're talking about the lease. Stick to the lease. Nothing on Ithan Avenue.
The code doesn't intend patchwork campuses.
Well, then you're out of order. That's it. Next.
Now, Jim, I just ask you to
So
wrap up
thank you
now.
for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come up for public comment?
Glenn Stunnebeck, one of the concerned Radnor residents. John, I'd like you to reconsider once again your position tonight.
Just to let you know, I'm still considering it because I've heard some new
good.
things. So.
I'm glad to hear that. And Mr. Curley, I'd like you to reconsider it too. And Mr. Mahoney, this is a serious matter we're confronted with here. Throughout these public meetings, the discussion has been about the financial benefits. They're fantastic on their face. I understand the good intentions of everybody involved here. You guys, Elaine Schaefer, everyone. It sounds good. But there's never been any discussion about the zoning issues. They're there. They're real. Now, I'm afraid, from what I heard, you're ready to approve this tonight. I don't know what the vote's going to be, but it appears like it's going to be a majority.
Clint, this would be for an introduction. Subsequent adoption would be much.
Well, I know that, but, you know, why prolong the agony? There's enough out here, enough information for you to, all of you, to collectively vote this down. This young lady that got up just a short while ago, Maya Van Rossum, if I pronounced it correctly, I'm sorry, and followed by Dr. Williams. She was very well prepared. She had done her homework. She hit the nail right on the head on the public trust doctrine, the zoning issues. There's a lot of meaningful information there. The reason you're comfortable with it is because you have a favorable opinion from your solicitor here. We've never seen it. We can't be persuaded by it because we don't know what it says. We know what Frone Crawford says, and he's more than just a good advocate. Frone Crawford is a recognized expert in zoning law. He's been before this board many times. I believe he was township solicitor for a short period here. A widespread reputation as a learned and knowledgeable zoning lawyer. He doesn't give opinions lightly. These are real issues here. So I urge you, first of all, to vote to waive the attorney-client privilege, make the solicitor's opinion available to us and the rest of the public so we can be persuaded. If you're persuaded, we'd like to be persuaded also. We want to keep it open on this also. And like I said before, there's enough here to work with to vote this down tonight and get it over with. And I almost reached that point at the last meeting when both the township manager and the solicitor were prepared to, because of the divided vote primarily. And a lot of work has been put into this. It really, I understand the work by you and by the township staff. Unbelievable hours of work, because this is a fascinating proposal. There's real dollars involved. It looks like a good thing. I have the same concerns that Maya has about the turf field, and I'm not an expert on it, but I'm concerned about turf fields. And all of us, at least my generation, we played on grass fields, muddy fields, wet fields, and we had a good time. We got the job done. Some of us got hurt, sure. We fell down and broke some bones a few times. That's going to continue to happen. Grass fields are good fields, and Radnor Memorial Field can be a good field. If it's got some defects now, let's work on it. Make sure there's some proper turf in there. We don't need artificial turf to make that work. We can do it. We don't need this money. The public needs this field. Thank you.
Good evening. Al Murphy, 627 Glimmery Road. Thank you for your time. Again, I was up here a couple of weeks ago. Just a couple of brief observations on two comments that were made tonight, John. On yours, as I was coming back, the eloquent statement about why you're supporting this and that why you sought elected office was to be here for the residents of the township, and that I believe your words were a lot of people are for this. And certainly a lot of people do come out and speak on behalf of the sports programs. They are very well organized. They have very good programs. It's just wonderful to see all the play around the township. But the reality is the demographics in Radnor Township haven't changed in 10, 12 years. Probably if you go back to the census before that, the 1990 census, they have changed very little since then. The households with kids, K to 12, is roughly a third of the township, a third of the households. If you take out the older kids who perhaps are playing at the high school level and not on some of these field teams, you probably have smaller than a third of the households. So your passion about elective office and representing the residents of the township, the reality is 2/3 of the residents of this township are funding the 1/3 that are using these programs. The only way that this works financially, and my guess is if we dug into this a little bit more, the only way that this works is through a public subsidy from the township to the Radnor Sports Association programs. I don't believe they're self-sustaining. Just a fact that I think we ought to consider here. So when we see all the people coming through here saying they're for it, we have to keep in context that 2/3 of the township are funding this. Happy to do it. They're great programs, but it is insatiable in terms of the demand. So when the passion comes to the fore in this room, I'd like to keep in context some of the facts. And the last point I'd like to observe is the gentleman who spoke passionately about the number of hours to be used on this program or on this field. And furthermore, he stated that the reference to a stadium being created on this field is ludicrous. What I might suggest is we go to the Webster's Dictionary and look up the definition of stadium. And it simply says if you provide tiered seating for spectators to watch an event, it's a stadium. What we're doing is we're putting in tiered seating, we're putting in a scoreboard, we're putting in a new field, and we're putting in lights. Now, to me, that constitutes a stadium, and we can argue size, we can argue all kinds of points, but from a definitional standpoint, the reality is this is a stadium. You might not want to call it that, but that's exactly what you're putting in here. Now, people have commented previously, Maya did a great job at documenting what she thought were the legal issues. But quite frankly, we have to accept the fact this field's going to get a tremendous amount of use. The other fields are going to collapse, and the usage is going to fall onto this field. And we're doing this for an important cohort inside the township, but it's a third of the cohort. The other 2/3 are making this work. You need to take that into account when person after person after person is getting up here and speaking passionately about why it's for the kids. The reality tonight, as Clint was speaking, it's really not for the kids. It's about, is this really a legal use? That's really what this is going to come down to. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Before we vote on this, there were some issues that were brought up about the actual lease wording. John Rice, do you want to address any of the potential issues that are in the lease? Maybe typos or errors that are in the lease?
The only issue would be 3A, which I think if you go back and look, and I have some of the prior drafts with me, and somewhere in the changes that were made since the last meeting, 3A, that reference to repairs, residing, and ceilings is of the comfort station. So in terms of introducing this tonight with that edit, that would be the only change in the language of the lease. That was always in the prior drafts, and I guess in the multiple revisions that have been made over the last couple months or more, somehow that got dropped out.
And John, what about there is no clause that I found for dispute resolution. Normally there's some type of mediation clause, and I have to admit I didn't even notice it not being there, but now that it's been raised, I think it should be there. Your comment?
No, I agree with you. It hasn't been in any of the prior drafts, but if you want to add that to this proposed lease, it would be under the miscellaneous clause that would provide for actually an arbitration, John, not a mediation. So I can add an arbitration clause under paragraph I, which would be the miscellaneous provisions, the standard arbitration clause, if there's any disputes regarding the terms. That eliminates litigation, traditional litigation, and puts it to arbitration. But I mean, with those two changes, then I think it's ready to go, from my view.
I have one or two comments on the lease. Keep in mind the commissioners did not receive this draft until... I have some more comments on the lease. Keep in mind the commissioners did not receive this draft, this final draft, until I believe it was Friday. So, finding time on the weekend to read through it and find issues and not have time to raise those with staff or the solicitor. I think there's still some numbers that should be plugged into this lease. We're leaving on page 11. We have the field removal and replacement. Nowhere does it state the amount, the cost of doing a removal, replacement, or any type of financial limit. So I just know in my commercial leases, I wouldn't be comfortable entering into any legal agreement unless it had the specifics spelled out, at least limits spelled out in those values. I would suggest that those numbers get plugged in, and I was under the impression that we would have some evaluation of what those costs would be, and those numbers would be plugged into the lease. I don't see those here, and that's a big stop for me.
Are you referring to paragraph 1 under F, John?
Yes. And also, so it's F1, and also it looks like F2.
So I'm not sure that you really want to have figures in here, because as time goes by, the cost of replacing the field or putting it back into its original condition may change. So I think the language in there is probably satisfactory, where it says AIS shall establish an evergreen letter of credit or other financial security acceptable to Radnor. And I assume that that means not only the type of security, but the amount of security.
The amounts. I mean, it would be similar to what you would do with a developer. I mean, we don't have a number right now. I'm not sure whether Agnes Irwin knows. I think they probably have some idea of how much they intend to spend to put the turf field down. But once that gets finalized, then we'll know that number, and we're going to determine, whether the amount or the type, both, is acceptable to the township. I'm going to have township engineer or somebody analyze that like we would with a normal development type of a situation. So they're going to have to file for permits. There's stormwater's been mentioned. There's a grading permit. There's other permits that they're going to have to file for. So those details, John.
But John, as a party to the lease, the township has to execute the lease. How can we execute the lease unless we have an idea what that number is? So how can Mr. Zinkowski, I'm sure I'm a signatory on this as well. I am the signatory on this. So how can I sign this lease on behalf of the township, the board, and the taxpayers if those numbers aren't known at the time of signing? And how can Agnes Irwin then go on to zoning, or not zoning, but to apply for the permits to do the turf in absence of having a signed agreement? So it seems like the cart is before the horse again.
But
I'm
John,
not being critical.
If you put a number in there today and you're locked in for the entire length of the lease, suppose the number changes and goes higher. How are you supposed to recoup that?
The language I use in my legal agreements is a value not less than. Okay, you don't have to say the exact number, but the value should not be less than a certain amount. The point is that I'm not seeing enough protections in this lease to protect the township. That's my opinion. I'm not the attorney in the room, but I do contracts on a daily basis. So I'd like to say that while we don't have to know the number, we need to know the minimum number. And I think it's important. Well, I think it's important.
John, I don't agree. I think this is just another delaying tactic.
It's not a delaying tactic.
Yes, it is, John. Hank has already answered your question.
I'm speaking to Mr. Rice right now.
I mean, the issue here is there going to be sufficient financial security established to guarantee that the turf field's removed, the lease is terminated, that it gets graded and resodded to acceptable condition. So it says it's got to be, the financial security's got to be acceptable to Radnor. So if we never get that, we will not issue any permits. I mean, the permit, just like in a development, the issuance of the permits is the control that we have to determine that there's enough money being set aside, and secondly, what the terms of the letter of credit are, because it's going to have to renew itself over the course of the lease term. I think the life of the turf fields are up to 10 years. So that, that's the trigger in my view in looking at this, John. That's why we left it. It's got to be acceptable to the township, so it wasn't lowballed by Agnes Irwin, that there's not some lesser amount of money that wouldn't be sufficient. But again, I'm going to need the township engineer or someone to look at all those costs. Agnes Irwin may have an idea of what it is, but we're going to look at it independently and then establish the cost and then the form of the letter of credit. So I understand, it almost sounds like a chicken and an egg thing, but with that language in there, that we have the final say, we have to issue the permits, I don't know what other controls we really need at this point on that particular issue.
I guess my concern is by not having a number in mind, neither party to this agreement knows that number. What if we do determine that number to be some number that Agnes Irwin is not comfortable with? What do we do then? We've signed this lease, we've executed this lease, and now it's hanging out there. What's the dispute resolution at that point?
They've agreed to sign a lease that says Radnor determines what's a sufficient amount. They've agreed.
Okay.
That's why that says that. So we have the final say in the amount of the financial security and the terms and conditions of whatever the letter of credit is. It's got to be acceptable to the township.
I'll move the approval with those two changes added.
Second.
I think there's another issue that I have, and it's the treatment of the ultimate Frisbee team. They have been using this location, and what appears to me, and these are my own words, in somewhat of a discriminatory nature, the Parks and Rec system will not necessarily guarantee them space, but we're about to take it away. And I think as part of approving this board should agree to promise this team, who has the same rights and the same ability or interest and need to have space in our township to practice. I still haven't seen anything concrete done in terms of that. Now, maybe I'm out of the loop.
John, if I may, the Ultimate Frisbee team is a school sport. As such, the school has responsibility, and they have been told by the Director of Facilities and the Sports AD that they will be provided space in the fall. That commitment's been made to them.
I'm seeing three shaking heads.
Well, that's
saying
fine.
no.
We have an email
Well, it's
from
fine for
them.
you. It's not fine for me.
Well, the fact of the matter is, John, is when the school district did not give them a field, we gave them a field, okay?
And
the head of the coach called me in February and was concerned. She said, "This is a lousy field," but it's good enough for us, okay?
Okay, but now...
wait a minute, John, I'm not done. And I told her at that time that I would guarantee that they would be there till May 27th if we signed the lease back in February. I would personally work with the commissioners and work with Nick and Nick so that they would not be thrown off that field. I told her that back in February. And Radnor Township has a commitment, okay, to try, if they work with the school district to find them a field. They will have a field, John.
Well, it's not, your word is nice, but for me,
thank you, John.
It's not enough. What I suggest here is that as part of this decision, we actually motion to have Parks and Rec set aside time for this team to play.
I absolutely disagree. Parks and Rec deals with all our sports, and this is just one of them.
That's right, and for us to for them to be discriminated
John,
against.
this is no different than what happened when the lacrosse program started. When I was on Parks and Rec and I was the chair, I think Kevin was a member. They came to us and said, "We'd like to get started, but there's no field usage," and we worked with them. And look where lacrosse is today.
Okay.
We have kids out there who are getting scholarships because of that program.
Well, I would like the same opportunity for the ultimate Frisbee
Make a
team.
motion, and we'll see how it flies, John.
Okay, I will. I also think it would be important, even though Mr. Rice has given us advice that we don't necessarily want to give out his lose our attorney-client privilege. I think there would be some benefit to the solicitor's opinion becoming public. I do have to say that when Mr. Rice gave us his opinion, I take his opinion because he is our solicitor. But it was given to us as a sole source of information. When we receive additional documentation from attorneys who represent other interests and they're counter to that advice, I would suggest we have to either come to terms with the difference and understand it, but one way of doing that is by releasing that document.
John, just make all the motions you want, let's vote on every
Okay.
motion you want, instead of talking all night.
I'm just trying to do diligence for something
That's
that will
fine,
in
make
fact-
motions, and if you got the votes, we'll do it. If you don't have the votes, we won't do it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may.
I'm not trying to stop this process. I want to make sure it's right.
I'm just going to take exception to the comment about Parks and Rec staff that you have to motion. I think the Parks and Rec staff will do whatever they can to accommodate the ultimate Frisbee team. And I think, personally, my opinion, this is solely my opinion, for them to be here and sitting asking for field space doesn't seem like that difficult of a thing that we can't work out. In the past, I think we've worked with the ultimate Frisbee team, have not taken things away. So, I don't see how that changes, and to make any implication that Parks and Rec won't do that, I think is wrong. So, we'll continue to make that agreement, to work with them to accommodate, work along with the school district to accommodate that particular sport. So, that's just.
No, we're not going to get into ultimate
Well,
Frisbee.
Bob, just so you understand,
I'll be
I'm
more than
not,
happy to after
I'm
the
not
meeting if you
accusing
want.
Parks and Rec of anything, but what I think has happened over the years, after taking a good look at the field allocation data, it's become pretty apparent to me that there is not necessarily a democratic process involved in the allocation of space.
Are there 4 commissioners that agree to work for ultimate Frisbee to get a field? Do we have 4 commissioners?
We're not, Bob's right, there's no motion involved.
No, we're not
for
making a
this.
motion, but just a sense of the board.
I accept Bob's
Sense of the board.
commitment that they will work,
Yes.
I don't
We got
feel
ultimate
there's a
Frisbee
need.
every week. We
So
made
there's
the
a sense of the
commitment.
board that we will make sure that
Yeah,
happens.
look, when Bob makes a commitment to do that, I'm comfortable with that. I don't-
Well,
it's not
the
fair.
reason I bring
And
this
these
up
guys,
is-
these guys out here will come back to us and tell us if he reneges on it.
Well,
You have a motion to introduce this, and then there was a second, and then there were a lot of discussion about other motions. I would just suggest you take one at a time if there's other motions beyond that first one, because that's the one that's up.
No, we made another motion to accept the 2 changes, and that was seconded.
Right, with those,
Okay.
with
Yeah,
right,
that's
with those
it.
revisions.
Yeah.
But that was the motion, and then you can discuss the other items. But I think
I'd like to call the
you're getting
vote.
off.
So just for review, the two amendments are the page 3A to add language to indicate that the repairs, residing, and sealing would be for the parking lot and the comfort station.
Just a comfort
Just a comfort
station in 3A, because the parking lot's treated later on in the lease.
Very good.
And then
So
the arbitration clause, if
Just
there's any
3A
disputes.
would add language that would indicate that that applies only to the comfort station. And then on page 13, we would add I-8, which would be standard language for a,
Arbitration clause
An
of any
arbitration
disputes.
very good.
so, Mr. Rice, as part of this motion, can I amend this motion to include the release of the solicitor's opinion? Or should that be done as a separate motion?
It's a separate motion.
Okay. All right, I don't have any further comments or questions. Any other board members before we vote? Okay.
I have one comment. Look, this has been a very difficult discussion over a number of months, and quite frankly, the easy thing is to give in to the voice of the majority. Not to say that they're wrong or they're right, but that's just the easy way out.
Call the question, John.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That was just the amendment, correct?
Yes.
On the amendment? I'll
Got to
approve
vote on
as
that
well.
first.
Well, no, that was just on the amendment. That was 6-0, 6-1?
5-1.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. And then I'll call the question on the original motion for the ordinance 2011, the lease itself.
As amended.
All those in favor? Aye.
Excuse me, I'll call the question.
Well, I mean, you're taking a half hour, you know?
I'll just take another minute now because
Well,
you're being rude.
Well, John, you're
You
acting,
don't need to be
you're
rude
acting like
here,
this
Bill.
is the United States Senate, and you can filibuster all night, you know?
No, that's not the point. I think it's important to get it right. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed, the motion carries 4-2. The motion carries. We introduce the ordinance.
I'd like to make a motion that we take a 5-minute break.
No, we're not taking a break.
No?
No. We're getting this done and go home.
I want to
Let the
move
breaks.
to, I want to move to have Solicitor Rice's opinion made public. Do I have a second? on that?
I'll second that for now.
Okay.
John, go through with me again. I think one of the things that's clear to me through this process is people get up and say, you know, we promised this, we promised that, we did this, we did that, but there's no documentation. So we're relying on people's wording, and I want to be very careful to vote against your advice. So I thought Maya made some, at least to me, a non-attorney, logical arguments that through the legal process and through the arguments and the briefings that our logic will become apparent through that process. The next inevitable conclusion from that is that we're just deferring the inevitable release. It may not come out in the form of this document, but it would be apparent to somebody to be able to put it together. So I'd like to hear your response to that statement from her, that essentially it will become apparent through the process as to the logic as to why you landed where you did. Because I think it's my preference in the absence of your advice is to release it, but I also recognize that that may be a very poor choice as a precedent-setting thing.
Wait a second. So what you're asking him to do, if I understand you correctly, is not to ask him to release the written opinion, but you're asking him to explain his rationale in arriving at his conclusions, right?
No, that's not it. I'm asking him to explain his rationale as to whether or not Maya's logic of that your conclusions will become apparent through the legal process and that releasing this
That's
is...
assuming somebody files a lawsuit. I mean, it's assuming somebody files a lawsuit and the township's got to defend it. So
But your logic for not releasing it to me earlier was we've been threatened with litigation.
Correct. And you set a precedent, Kevin, if you start doing that. You can have anybody come in here, once the attorney-client's breached, then anything's open. Anything I've sent other than my opinion regarding this can be asked for under the same theory. Well, you're going to show it to us anyway in 12 months, so why not show it to us now so that we can use that to then file our complaint? I mean, it's just not a good, it opens up too many doors and opens up discovery, it opens up all kinds of things, not just this case.
The reason that the attorney-client privilege is in place in this Commonwealth is because the law encourages frank and open discussion between the attorney and the client. And you should not be able to waive that lightly, only under very significant circumstances, which I don't think this is one of them, and I agree with John. To open up the door here means anybody could walk in here and say, okay, I want to hear what your opinion is on this issue, that issue, this issue. It's just not appropriate. I want to be able to have frank discussions with my counsel. And if I think that it's going to get waived here in a public meeting, I'm not going to be so open with him, and I don't expect him to be open with me either. And that's just not a good precedent to set.
If any, you know, and this is a different type of a situation because you're a public body, but I think what Hank said applies even with public bodies. If I have to be concerned that any legal advice I give about any matter is going to be voted on as a matter of course because folks disagree with where you're headed, I understand the disagreement. And they're entitled to rely on their own legal advice. I disagree with it. I don't think it applies. I think that folks are too concerned on the identity of the user under this lease. Private entities are part of the public. The students at Agnes Irwin are part of the public. Churches are part of the public. To say that they're excluded under any theory, I think opens up some other possible legal problems if you start drawing those distinctions. So, I mean, you've got my opinion. I think that it's just a bad practice to accede to this. I don't think my opinion is going to convince anyone that stood up here and opposed this. It's not going to convince anybody. I guarantee you, it will not convince anyone. And it just gives them legal advice and then creates some other issues going forward in anything else that I might communicate to this board.
All right, I'll just put it to a vote to kill it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Motion fails 5-1. All right, thank you, Mr. Rice.
All right, the second.
Should've went home. I would have went home.
Yeah, well, she's dedicated.
Yeah, well.
The second item on the agenda is item K, a pilot agreement with the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia. I don't know, Bob or John, who's going to kind of give a quick and appropriate rundown of this explanation.
This is an agreement involving the school district, the county, the township, and the owner of two parcels in the township, Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia, involving appeals that were filed to real estate assessments. There's been, over the course of at least the last year, a lot of ongoing negotiations. This is a settlement agreement. The school district, it's a payment in lieu of taxes that settles that issue through 2017. The school district on these tax assessment appeals has taken the lead, and they and the county and the township are involved in this, but the school district primarily takes the lead on this. I think this is a good resolution going forward. The dispute revolved around the part of the property that was being leased to a for-profit entity and what that value was in terms of real estate taxes. So I think it's going to be in front of the school district later this month, and it's before the board tonight to approve it.
I'll move the approval of the pilot agreement.
Second.
Commissioner, comment?
Hey, John, get somebody to fix the pagination. Page 9 of 8 always looks suspicious to me.
Pagination, is that a football team or what is
Yeah,
that?
they play out of the minors.
I will ask the whoever, whether it was a school district solicitor or the
Probably
Jewish
Pupia.
Federation
Yeah.
solicitor, but I did not notice that. But we'll fix that.
All right, public comment? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Commissioner Spengler moved. Commissioner Higgins second.
Next item is the access and utility easement agreement for the Zaya Group, LLC.
Just do it. You know, it's right there. Just
All right,
read it.
I make a motion to introduce it and approve it.
Second.
I actually had some questions about this. Can you take
should've
them,
gone.
Joe?
Sure.
So the co-locators and the additional carriers that were listed in here, are there any now? And how many, what's the capacity for that?
It's my understanding that this line, it's going to be a
Fiber optic.
fiber optic, will run to our fenced-in yard.
Right.
There'll be a small
Right.
building, and only T-Mobile uses it right now.
Right.
So that's it for now.
So nobody else?
Unless
now?
technology changes, it's theoretical that some other user could tie into that, but it's just T-Mobile. I actually have two different applications, Radnor and another municipality, where it's T-Mobile. So then they tie into that, the fiber optic panel, and if they go away or something changes, it'll just be T-Mobile unless there's some other carrier that provides that service or needs that particular line.
And we do have other companies co-located on the antenna mast.
Correct, but they will
not
not
on
tie
They
into
won't
the
use this
fiber
box.
optic. They don't use that, and I don't understand the technological reasons, but they do not use the fiber optic, just T-Mobile.
So the easement that's covered in this lease, or this easement, is just for the cables, underground cables going in, not
Correct.
the actual tower? That's
Correct.
a separate lease?
Correct.
And how much does that, do you know offhand what that lease, the value of that lease?
That's, I don't. That's the T-Mobile hanging
Right.
on the big tower.
That's
Yeah.
money.
Not sure what that is
So
off the
this,
top of my head.
this fee, rental fee would be in addition to
In
what
addition
we
to
get
that.
for, okay.
Yeah, this is sort of a unique, and again, I had it come up, and they had proposed sort of a flat one-time payment, and the more we looked into it, it just made more sense. They weren't sure how long they would want the easement, so we agreed on these numbers, you know, with the idea that if anybody else ties into it, we would get the same revenue from there, and there'd be the escalator on an annual basis.
Okay, thanks.
Any further board comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Commissioner Higgins made the motion. Commissioner Spengler seconded that.
Next item on the agenda is the bill list identified as 2011-5B. In the grand total of the authorized disbursement request of $3,636,150.98. And these bills have been approved by the respective department head and are within the budget limits that we imposed at the December 13, 2010 meeting. So I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Board comment. I just wanted to point out that this is for $3,636,150.98.
I have one comment. There are a handful of line items for office basics, and consistent with my previous recusal, I recuse myself from those particular line items.
Your recusal is noted. No further board comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And that was moved by Commissioner Higgins and seconded by Commissioner Spengler, noting Commissioner Mahoney's momentary absence during the vote. Commissioner Nagel, Parks and Recreation.
We have a series of resolutions, 72 through 83, that are all essentially identical, so we would like to vote on them as a unit. And they are to authorize us entering into agreements with Brandywine, Sports for Two, and et cetera, et cetera. The reason we're doing this is the possibility that we go over the 3,000 limit. So therefore, these are preemptive, if you will.
So you're going to move the approval?
I move the approval.
Second?
All right, so we have a
Items-
motion to, do you mind if I recite them all? Motion to approve Resolution 2011-72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, and 82, and 83.
Got him.
Any board comment? Staff comment?
This is the first time we're doing this publicly, so I just want to acknowledge that these instructors and vendors that we have engaged with throughout the last at least 15 years, some of them obviously less time than that, but this isn't a new practice for the Parks and Recreation Department. It's just a new process that we're taking in order to satisfy the requirement in the charter. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Any public comment?
Hi, Jim Schneller, St. David's Park. I am objecting to item 2011-75. It's called a Harry Potter day camp of some sort. And I believe that I speak for the majority of Radnorites who think that a tax basis, any funds from our coffers should not proceed towards the workings or indoctrination or anything involving the occult. Briefly, if this was any sort of religious type, just as an analogy, if this was any sort of a religious approach to day camp, obviously it wouldn't be considered. Well, this is the antithesis of religion, and I can't understand how it's going into, I think, its third year.
Jim, it's a fantasy. It's fiction.
I brought for you
Come
tonight,
on.
before, you won't have to listen to me. I brought a list.
Well, I am
of-
listening to you. I've been listening to you all night long, with all due respect.
I understand, but serious issues deserve comment. I brought a list of 60 books. They're not all pro or con. The Harry Potter issue has resulted in that series being banned from a lot of libraries. It's on the 30 most ever banned books. It's bad for children. So I just want you to have this. You may find one on the internet.
I disagree with you.
Duly noted,
John, you look at the copy.
In the spirit of full disclosure, I did read one of the Harry Potter books, and I didn't find anything wrong with it. So
I read them all,
I don't
seen
know
all
if I
the
can agree
movies,
with
and
you,
I'll see
Jim.
the next one as soon
I
as
have
it's
no
out.
objection.
And I have seen several of the movies.
I understand.
And I allowed my children
If we
to
can
see
keep
them.
them separate in our minds, but at the age of 6, at the age of 16, we're easily influenced. And what's led me to do this is the fact that the entire phenomenon was not a public phenomenon. It came from the top down. If Hollywood wants to send this message, and they send it constantly, we should not give a penny to any furthering of that, in my opinion. And it is essentially a sort of government sponsoring of religion.
Well, actually, in reality, Jim, we don't give anything to people pay, and we share the profit.
But we're giving it full approval. I think it might be sponsored even, because aren't we contributing township money?
No.
We're contributing township property, we're contributing township organizational and
The
administrative.
programs, Jim, the programs bring in about 30% of revenue, so it does cover all the costs to operate the program.
All right, however, we are
Okay.
sponsoring. This
Thank you,
stuff.
Jim. We heard you.
All right, we
Thank
are
you.
sponsoring, and it's not proper. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Everyone's here? 7-0.
Tammy, do you have any announcements you want to make about upcoming stuff? Anything jumping out of your mind?
I just want to reiterate that we are still currently taking registrations for summer. Everything is currently still open and no programs have closed. So please go to our website at www.radnorparksandrecreation.com to look at all the exciting things we have planned for the summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. That's all for Parks and Rec.
Okay. Commissioner Schaefer, Library? I'll keep this brief. Under Public Health, Chapter 115 amendment was worked on by the Board of Health. I believe that is in John Rice's possession, or was. That will be coming back to the board for introduction at the July meeting, and probably a good month or so until we actually put it on the agenda for a vote. We want to give just a little background on that. The amendment to the Chapter 115 is to give equal treatment to cats as we do dogs. But we're working with some of the outside volunteer groups to try to come up with a total solution to deal with feral cats and the impact on feral cats. So that will be on the agenda. Nothing under personnel administration, except I just want to mention that I will not be present for the next meeting, and Commissioner Spengler will be running that meeting, I hope. Bill is available?
Just so everyone knows, it starts at 7, it's over at 8, so be ready.
Okay. Bill is promising a very short meeting. And everyone, I know when I announced this to the board, they all started smiling, so I don't know if that's good or bad for me. Anyway, that's it. Any public participation? Seeing none, we are adjourned.